sorry, I forgot to start the recording at the beginning. So does anybody have any questions from the commission?
Is the parking area going to be pervious?
Yep, always.
Are we talking pavers or gravel?
So, so the same pavers we put in our house, they're unilock pavers. They have like the 3/4 inch spacing.
You want it to be here.
Same exact
I'm
thing.
here, but you're not.
Hey,
Okay. There's a lot of things going on here. Okay, and so is this gonna be like a separate property, or is this gonna be like adjoining to yours somehow? Oh, you're muted. Can I mute you?
Is that on?
Yeah. So,
it's
Yeah,
completely
completely
separate
separate.
parcel, yeah.
okay. All right. I was just, the way that they named it on the plans, I wasn't sure what was
I know, it's
going on.
confusing.
Okay. All right, does anybody from the commission have any questions, concerns, comments? Okay, does anyone from the public have any questions, concerns, comments?
Yeah, I do. Bob Bennett, 134 Bass Point Road.
Okay, go ahead.
My concern is that with this house being up on stilts, that they're just gonna give the ocean free flowing to come right out and through this whole area here. And my concern is with the pavers, which he does it, which he's gonna use like he has at 135. It's all pitched down toward the street, and it's all pitched right down toward my house. And where we sit over here is the lowest part of the street. And every time we have a storm, the water accumulates and just builds up. We've had, in 2018, we had 3 major storms, and this road was impassable for 2 to 3 days. So I have a lot of concern with that. And with the seawall issues over there, that seawall's been compromised twice within the last 4 years. You're gonna start removing houses and removing foundations and disturbing all that area. I have a lot of concerns about that.
So, but yeah, the foundation itself isn't really being removed. The actual, the basin part of it will be there. And we're essentially creating a dry well by backfilling it with gravel and crushed stone. And then putting on the bottom of that basin, so to speak, holes for it to drain naturally into the earth. As far as, back in, the house being demoed and lifted up, I mean, it really, in 2013, if a situation was similar like that, the house being removed and having additional drainage added is probably not going to make any difference on something like that. I mean, I understand the concern on that, but is any water that's ever come over our driveway, you can see there's no puddling or pooling of any sort. It all drains right down into the ground because we dug out the necessary requirement and backfilled with crushed stone and chip stone. And we have excellent drainage in our driveway.
Yeah, that being said, that's fine, but you've only been there for 3 years. You weren't here when we had them storms in 2018, and this whole complete area was a flooded mess. So that's what I'm saying,
No,
It may not happen today or the next day, but we get major northeast storms over here and it gets ugly.
So how is the house being raised up and having additional drainage adding to that concern?
Well, because I think with the house being raised up, the water's gonna be able to come right underneath it and it's gonna roll right down the street.
That's why we're adding the drainage underneath the house.
Yeah. It's not gonna drain at high tide because it has no way
This is
to
the
drain.
Conservation Commission.
Sorry, what was that, Bob?
I said, when it's high tide and there's a storm going, it's not gonna drain because it has no way to drain. The only where it drains is back into the ocean.
So the interesting thing about building regulations in floodplain is that they encourage people to raise houses. So if you're improving the house more than 50% of the value, they have to do something to let the water through. So you're right, it is going to change the way the water comes through. It's not going to be a block anymore. I mean, the seawall will remain, but the house won't block the water anymore. And that is not necessarily a function of what they're choosing to do. This is more expensive for them to build it this way. It's what the law says they have to do. So it's it is going to change the way water comes through. The fact that they're going to fill the basement with gravel basically will help absorb some of it, but the way the water flows is definitely going to change. And that's the law. It's not necessarily what they're choosing.
Well, that's gonna cause massive flooding for us. That's what's going to happen. It's going to come on to our property.
So, I mean, it's a building regulation. It doesn't fall under conservation necessarily. The building commissioner makes those decisions of whether it's elevated or whether they need to just put flow through vents. I believe it's a velocity zone, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so is there a catch basin close to the front of that house?
There is, and I know what he's referencing. You know, the street floods just because of the drainage that the street has set up. They actually, in the back, we can see the pipe for the catch basins for the overflow. When there is substantial amount of water, it's rushing out. You know, it's just not really so much, you know, the house, even at the size that it is, it's not really going to stop any water. It's just going to divert it left or right. You know,
Right.
water's going to come over, it's going to come over, and it's going to go to its low point. It does accumulate in the front of 132 and 130, 135 and Bot's house as well. But that's not, the house being removed or elevated isn't going to change that in any way, you know.
Where does that catch basin outfall to?
Directly on the left side of, or if you're in the street, our right entrance to the driveway, there's one catch basin. I believe a little further, on the other, right across from 151, there's another catch basin. And it shoots pretty much to the left side of the house, looking at the street on 151. And there's, I believe, a 6-inch duct-line pipe that's diverting for overflow.
I mean, part of the problem is when the water's high and it's a storm, there's pressure on the outfall pipe, and so the water can't go out. I mean, this is the problem we have in the lowlands. We have this problem on Willow Road. It's just unfortunately the design. Okay. All right.
I mean, the small parcel of the house being there is not going to stop. Again, the water is going to find where it's going to find.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're hoping that adding the additional drainage will help absorb a little bit. In fact, we believe it's going to help out substantially. I understand the concern, but I don't think it's going to impact in any capacity that they think it's going to.
Does anybody else have any?
I have a question. My name is Gene Yonkers and I live across the street at 160 Bass Point Road. Will the trees be removed?
No,
By the
I love
house?
those trees.
Good, good, good.
Yeah.
Those will stay.
good,
Can you
good.
state your name again, sir?
My
I'm
name is
taking a
Gene
minute.
Yonkers and I live at 160 Bass Point Road across the street. We're new residents of the street of 3 months.
Colleen, my name is Mark Machini. Gene and I are here
How do you
together.
spell Machini?
It's an Irish name. Maccini. And Mark is MARC.
Thank you.
Yeah. The trees are going to stay. We like the trees.
If you look in the plan, they actually look like little bushes
yeah,
on the
there's-
plans. They show them.
Good.
Oh, we did look at the plan and we
Yeah,
saw
yeah.
the
They're,
pictures. They
they're
are-
staying.
Those are the two trees out front in the plans.
So I looked at the DEP website today and they haven't issued a file number, which means we can't issue a permit for this.
Sure.
The comments say that they're missing NOI site plans that show existing and proposed conditions. They're missing resource area impacts and resource area impacts.
Yeah.
So we talked to them on email. I'm kind of going back and forth with them.
Okay.
They received it, but we're just going to bring it in actually tomorrow to the office. So we're kind of in communication with that office
Okay.
in Wilmington.
So they do, I need an updated version of that also because it's land subject to coastal storm flowage is marked on here, but it doesn't tell me what the impacts are. And that's something I need to fill out when I issue your permit.
Okay.
Okay.
So do you have those calculations from
We have those from
engineer?
Rob.
From Native Tech. Yeah, I
Native
think
Tech.
that might have been emailed over. There was a lot of emails. He has it
Okay.
all, color coded and all that other stuff.
Okay,
that
so whatever it is you end up submitting to DEP, can you also submit that to me?
Sure.
That would be great. Thank you.
You're going, just to be specific, you're going to bring a site plan and what else?
So I have the email, I can pull it up. They have a couple lists of things that we needed to have over there, so.
Okay, I'll just put down that whatever you've been notified to bring, you're gonna bring.
Yeah, so everything they
Yeah.
told us to
That
bring, I have a
will-
little list and we have all the paperwork ready to bring over.
We plan on driving up there tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we can't vote to issue a permit until they have that stuff cleared up. So,
Can we put pending DEP number and vote off of that?
if the commission wants to, we're not supposed to do that. I guess we could do it pending everything being in order. That I receive everything I need. Does anybody else from the public have comments? I know there are a lot of people that were interested in this initially. Okay. How does the commission feel about this?
Excuse me,
Bless you.
sorry. I couldn't press mute fast enough.
Nobody has an opinion? Mark, Henry?
Too new to know the process, but I don't see it.
I think that assuming the updated stuff we get is in order, I think it would be okay. I think we condition that the trees stay, that it can't be a paved driveway, has to comply with FEMA regulations. Erosion controls. That's all I can think of right now. Stay erosion controls comply with FEMA. Does anybody else have any?
Hey, Kristen,
Yeah.
I have one more question. The light
Sure.
post, does that remain? No changes to that?
The light post?
Yeah, the light post that's right in front of the property, or to the left. That's not being affected. Is that correct?
Public light post?
Yeah.
I mean, the town or the national grid?
Oh, the telephone pole?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
no,
we can't touch that,
that's,
yeah.
nothing
No,
changes.
nothing on
We
that
can't
thing.
touch that, yeah.
Thanks.
Are you looking at out the door at it now? To see if
I
it
was, honestly, I
I
thought he
was-
was talking, there's a lamp in front of the driveway.
Yeah.
I was like, what is the light?
No, not that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I think assuming everything's in order, we're really not supposed to do this.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is the elevation gonna stay the same?
The elevation is gonna be under 30 feet. I think the final is pretty much where you look out, everyone looks at the top of the roof line right now.
No, the
The
elevation of the land.
Oh, elevation stays the
and the
same. Yeah,
yard and all that.
yeah,
That's
no,
the
that
same.
stays the same.
We can condition that. No change in site elevation.
I
Okay.
guess
Kristen, question on the seawall. Is there a minimum height or does that need to remain the same and be untouched, or can it be updated and increase the height of it?
They can if they want to.
There's no
does it
requirement
currently?
to.
No, it currently matches yours on your property, right? The seawall height?
What, the
Us?
height?
Yeah.
No, it's actually, it is a little lower
It's a
right
little
now.
lower.
We
Are you
planned
gonna
on,
raise it to match or leave it?
we didn't put that on the, we didn't put that on there. We're probably just gonna end up doing like, just like a safety railing or something like that.
Okay.
Just like maybe like something cable or something, I don't know, something small like that.
Okay.
But we didn't plan on putting any raising of the wall, no. And if we do, obviously, we'll file for additional,
Yeah.
amendment or something.
Okay.
Or,
That sounds
Kristen, but
Yeah.
thinking about it, I mean, I hate to delay somebody another month, but I seem to recollect that several times we haven't approved things because we didn't have a DEP number.
Yes.
And are we setting a precedent if we start doing it?
Yeah,
I'm-
sure.
I mean, we could
Pending
Pending
a
DEP.
DEP approval.
hold an interim meeting, or you can just wait until the next month. I mean, we really shouldn't do it, particularly because if DEP has concerns, it's just gonna get appealed and you're gonna lose even more time.
Good.
Yeah,
Then
that's why
don't
we're
do
asking for pending. Obviously, once we get DEP number, which everyone seems to be, pacified with the information that we provided, that we get the DEP number, we give it, pass it forward, and then, obviously, so we don't have to go through the whole.
You
additional-
don't have it. Don't do it. No. No. No.
So, yeah, I mean, the problem is that takes away the ability of the commission to fully opine on what happens, and it gives me the right to do it on my own. And I am moving out of town and resigning from the commission in a couple of weeks, so that won't be my decision to make. It'll be somebody else's decision to make.
Oh, boy.
So so this is my last meeting on the Conservation Commission. So after this, the other 6 will be in charge on their own. So I don't know that the commission feels comfortable with that arrangement.
I mean, can we vote on it? I mean, or something like that? I don't know where everyone stands.
It's just the pushback of another month, kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't get to, this is a joint decision by the commission. I can't unilaterally make this decision. So if you guys want to vote tonight, you can. I mean, we don't know what DEP is going to say. They've been appealing a lot of coastal projects lately.
Wait, are we calling for a vote or you asking us?
It was a general statement. To the
Oh,
commission.
sorry.
It's okay. So it's
Yeah, we basically are using the building code of FEMA. I can't imagine what they would possibly have anything to say about it. I mean, we're spending additional money to comply with them. I mean, honestly, we'd like to keep it, at the same elevation it is, but they have their own set of building requirements. That's, we spent, for an engineer to make sure that we were complying with all this. I don't know.
How about this? Depending on how the commission feels, we could vote pending an acceptable outcome from DEP. I will say DEP doesn't move particularly quickly, so you may not get a decision before anything from them before the next month anyway. What's it been, 2 months, and they finally just had comments on this?
Actually, it's been about a week and a half since I emailed them. Because
but originally you guys filed 2 months ago. You missed the last one. So you were filed when? The beginning of
That was
July?
actually from the newspaper ad that got messed up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
When did you, I don't know, we
It's been
just got
about a month.
comments from them.
It's been about a month. Yeah, you're right.
So,
I don't
you know,
think you can proceed with the building permit unless you
No.
have, yeah.
Right.
So
Right. That's why we just wanted to get
We're
this kind
just
of
trying- yeah,
moving forward, but we're not going to proceed until everything's
One less roadblock,
right.
just so we don't have to, do another conservation meeting in a following month, and so on and so forth.
I'm okay
Just the
moving
risk you
forward
take.
now or doing a meeting in between if we need.
I mean, we could do a meeting in between and it could just be this on the agenda. So it could be quick if we needed to.
Whichever.
I'd feel more comfortable, just given the frequency of them appealing coastal things lately. I would feel more comfortable if we just held an interim meeting when we got the impact and stuff from them. We just
would
continue to
too,
that.
actually. I feel that way too. I guess I just, you know, I hate to delay you, but I guess I just feel like we should just follow the rules of what we're supposed to do as a commission.
I mean, I think if this is the only thing on the agenda, you wouldn't have to re-advertise or anything like that. We just continue the next meeting and we could hold an interim meeting, or we could set a date now.
So
And if that interim
hypothetically,
meeting
if we get this squared away in the next week, would we be able to get something put together a few days shortly after that? You know, another Zoom thing, or how much time will we need, you know?
It has to be posted on the website 2 days in advance, 48 hours in advance. So if you got it worked out next week, maybe the 31st.
Okay.
I mean, if that's okay with everybody, I could still be on the commission. So we could say the 31st and just have a quick one just for this.
Yeah,
That'd be
I'm good.
fantastic.
That sounds fair.
What does the commission think about that?
Yeah,
Sounds good to me.
it's fine.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So let's plan to continue. We'll continue until August 31st. And with the hope that things are worked out with DP. If things are not worked out with DEP, you'll have to wait till the next meeting. Is that fair?
Understood. Yep.
That's another 2 weeks at that point. It's not that long.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So do I hear a motion to continue to an August 31st meeting?
I move.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Eden and Mark. Got it. Okay, we'll do a roll call. Eden, how do you vote?
Aye. Yeah.
Mark,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Skylar,
Aye.
and I am an I as well. Okay, so is that everybody? Oh,
Colleen's an
Colleen, Colleen, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Colleen's and I.
I'm sorry. Your face wasn't at the top, so I forgot you. Okay, so it passes unanimously. Let me know as soon so please provide to me whatever you're providing to DEP and let me know as soon as you hear back from them.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
like I said, we're gonna drive down there tomorrow. We'll get this taken care of.
Sounds good. Call
right.
first because the office is not fully open.
Okay,
Okay, perfect.
thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Okay, thank you.
Good luck.
Second
Thanks,
is a
guys.
notice of, what's that?
We just say thank you.
Okay, thank you. So second is a notice of intent for Nahant Bay eelgrass harvesting for transplantation in Hingham Bay and within land under ocean. So this, I don't know if anybody's here for this. This was in the paper today, which is too late for us to discuss tonight. And also a DEP file number hasn't been issued, so we couldn't vote on this anyway. So this will be perhaps heard at another future meeting. Okay, next up, request to amend the order of conditions for 4 White Way, DEP file number 0470593. Request to change mitigation measures for work within bordering land subject to flooding. And is there anybody here to speak to that? Hey, David.
Can you guys hear me? I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah,
You want to give us a quick update?
my computer screen is saying mute, so I don't know if you guys can hear me. But yeah, from the last meeting, we went back and revisited. I had 2 engineers come out, and we looked at a couple different ideas. One was being the pipe with a catch basin, and I talked to the neighbor in the back at 6 Willow Road, and he wasn't okay with a pipe. He was okay with a swale. So I drew up something, and the engineer is actually on vacation. We'll be back tomorrow, and he said he can draw something up. And when he came over, he said that would be the, you know, the second best thing we can do is try to direct the water to the back of the property with the property owner's approval, which we have, would be the best thing to help my driveway and alleviate a lot of water on the street. Which were, you know, I sent you some videos recently through Kristen from the last
Mhm.
rainstorm that we had. So it's helping, I think it's helping the town, and it's also gonna help my situation as well.
Okay, I shared those videos with the commission, so they have all seen them. Okay, does anybody on the commission have any questions, comments, concerns? So how is this going to work? You're going to cut down, so that's a little bit mounded where the vegetation is.
Yeah, it's just mulch. We'll just remove the mulch. And we're gonna cut, as you see on the driveway where the apron is.
Yeah.
We're gonna make a drain in there that drains into the swale. And that would catch the water from, you know, probably about, I would say about 75% of the driveway.
So you're thinking like a trench drain right there?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, that would feed into the swale and just bring it towards the back of the property. And also, if the water gets up, and I mean, you saw the last rainstorm that we had, it was a quick little like microburst, it looked like. And you're talking about 5 minutes of rain and the water was up the driveway. So that's really gonna help the street, you know, take some of that water away and stop the flooding that we typically get.
so how would that work going under your fence? It would just be like a,
Yeah, we're gonna put, so the
Opening.
engineer said, yeah, he was gonna line it with stone. So that way, you know, if this kid's walking in the back, we'll put crushed stone in it. If this kid's walking in the back, no one's gonna fall in a ditch.
Yeah.
Go break an ankle or something. Yeah, so it will all be engineered. I'm sorry, he was on vacation. It was kind of short notice for him too. So he left, but he'll be back tomorrow and I can get the plan over to you guys, the engineering plans for this. If you guys are okay with it.
okay.
So the
So
neighbors
is it
are
gonna
okay.
be, I mean, I guess the point of the fence, right, was to keep critters out. Now critters are gonna be able to come in through that swale.
Not with the stone. No, we're gonna put probably some mesh in there. So
Yeah.
the water can flow through.
Like filter
and-
fabric.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
And just underneath the fence itself is put maybe some, I'm thinking out loud here. Maybe some sort of mesh that the critters can come in,
Mhm.
but the water can't go out.
So will it be an actual depression or will it just be you'll dig a trench, fill it with stone and then
Yeah, that was my question.
it'll go flow through that way?
So that's what the engineer, he would kind of get in, you know, more involved with the details.
Yep.
But, you know, roughly speaking to him, he said he can fill it with stone because he saw we have little kids.
Right.
So he said, obviously, you don't want your kids running in there and tripping and, you know, falling into this thing. So he said there's a lot of different ways they can make it. And I did tell him my concerns about obviously the coyotes in the back coming in.
Right.
And, you know, I don't want the critters in the yard. That's kind of the main thing. So before the fence was there was coyotes walking up and down the yard, and which was a big concern of mine. So I think from what he said, and I think I provided his number to you as well, Kristen, on the
Yep.
email.
Yep.
He said anytime after tomorrow, he's available for a call.
Okay.
And then we can get those plans. But yeah, the point is not to have the critters come in, but make it in a way that the water will flow through.
Okay.
Can you specify what type of engineer this was? Is it a hydrologic engineer? What type of engineer was this?
I'm not sure his title, but I know he's the engineer for the town of Everett. So he does all their drains and things like that for the town.
I see.
So he was very familiar when he came. He actually went down to the DPW and he looked at all the maps and looked at all the drains. And kind of, you know, he had a few comments, which I think he will talk to you about as well, Kristen.
Okay.
And, you know, he had some concerns about the drainage and I don't know if I sent you one of the videos of it was like a sunny day and someone drained something on Pond Street and in front of the house was just, was flooded.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's just his suggestion was there should be another catch basin somewhere on the street that would shoot into the golf course. At the end of, at the beginning of White Way, where that path is to shoot over to the golf course, because we're picking up water from from two major streets.
Yep.
And, us being the lowest point on the street, it's impacting us. So I think, this swale should definitely help. And, the neighbors are they're okay with it. So I had a conversation, and Steve himself actually walked over and, we talked about it with the neighbors, and he kind of helped me out with that as well. So, and, everyone was on board. Their concern is they don't want the front of the house being flooded still. And this idea would, help the street itself get that water back. And he's okay with the water dumping into his property in a natural way, not with a pipe that's turning into a swamp.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments?
Seems that the intersection point where the mulch is and the street will be important. The elevation of that and how the street would drain into it, because otherwise it just needs to go from the drain at the cross of the driveway. That's like really the only entry point for it to get into that soil. So, hopefully the details of the engineer address that the street could also run directly into it through the mulch area. So you have a much larger footprint.
Yeah, there's
there,
also
so-
a brim there from the town, so we would have to cut that if you wanted to drain there. So
I'm sure
I
they'd
was
be
just
fine with
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, just think of it. If it's coming up the driveway, it would just flow right into that, because the water, first of all, just goes right into the driveway,
Mhm.
just up the driveway.
What if there was kind of like an apron, a little bit, instead of it just being a small entrance opportunity? I mean, you could maybe, I don't know, obviously this isn't to scale, but perhaps you could do like a little bit of a, maybe you lose this last shrub if you had to, and you could put like a
I'm gonna
little bit of
remove those. Yeah, those are not gonna be there. This is just a little illustration to show you guys where everything was
oh, all
going.
these are gonna come out?
Yeah, because those don't survive when it's wet. So
Yeah.
those are gonna die if it gets really wet in there. So those are gonna be coming out.
Well, they could come live on the other side, maybe.
Yeah. Again,
So you don't
I
waste 'em.
apologize. Yeah, it was something kind of quick. I had to just throw it together, but
Yeah.
yeah, those are gonna come out.
I mean, if you had a little bit of an apron and you cut a little bit of a curb cut, it's kind of flat there. I don't know if it needs much of a curb cut. It would help kind of the water get in. And then if you had a trench drain, that'll relieve the water that's on your side as well.
Yeah, because it's gonna catch a lot of the water. Just that drain on the apron, my apron itself. It's gonna catch, a huge part, the big driveway, the existing driveway, and half of the half moon itself, it would catch.
Well, what happened? It's gone.
Hey, Tom.
Don't turn it.
Okay. Does anybody else from the commission have comments before we go to the public?
I guess I'm curious about, I'm not an engineer, but if this is a trench filled with crushed stone, with the amount of water that we're seeing on the street, I'm curious how much, if the crushed stone is going to slow down the drainage enough that it's just going to flow over the sides of the trench and not solve the problem.
Well, I think that's where the engineer is gonna come in. I think anything sending the water to the back of the property is gonna help the street, whether it be, a certain amount of gallons. It's just less water on the street. Once Willow gets backed up, there's no way for this water to go. So this way it has somewhere for the water to go, whether it be slower, faster, again, I don't know that. And he would, give us the details on that. But whatever we do, directing the water to the back of the property is gonna help the street in a big way.
Okay.
Yeah. Great question I had was how you maintain it. If it is gravel, it's going to fill up with leaves and sand and dirt very, very quickly if it's not a very deep swale. So I'm not sure how you handle that.
So this is actually a fairly common way of handling stormwater. This is a more significant problem than most, but it's just a perpetual condition that they have to maintain it. And so if they sell, or whoever's next would have to maintain it. And if they're not, we can come and, you know, point to that as an issue that they need to rectify. So sometimes if enough sediment accumulates, it has to be dug out and gravel put in again. Sometimes it's just surface stuff that you can just clean out seasonally. But it would be on the onus of the homeowner to maintain it. But if we're aware of an issue, we could issue an enforcement order forcing
Kristen,
maintenance.
this is Steve Arzillo, 64 Willow Road.
Hi.
And I'd like to clear up a little bit of the confusion here. It's not a trench, it's a depression. He'll be removing some of the fill that's in his corner of his yard. It will be a lower depression than the street and will naturally flow into my yard without any obstruction.
Okay. I think
I don't think I think looking at it as a trench that'll fill up is a mistake. He's going to remove fill from that corner of the yard. It'll be a swale, like a depression in the yard, not a trench. His corner of his yard will trail off into my yard. And then the water from his driveway and from the street, which should affect all his neighbors, will naturally drain into my yard.
so. Will it be a a grass depression rather than gravel?
Doesn't need to be gravel. It can just be grass. As long as the depression is lower than the street, it's going to naturally drain into my yard. Doesn't have to be a trench. Just remove fill where you see the kids play area. Lower that area. Remove the fill between the street and that area. Spread it out so it fans out to where he's got it directed. And it'll just naturally flow. There's no obstruction. There's no gravel. None of that stuff, Dave.
I agree. I just want to clarify because it was described as a gravel swale.
I understand, but I think that was a mistake of description.
So it won't be level then, David. So there is
No, it'll be low. From the street level to my yard is about 2 feet of a drop. As long as he maintains that drop from the street to my yard, it'll naturally flow. It doesn't need to be a trench or anything like that.
I agree. I just want to clarify because if you do a gravel trench and you fill it with gravel, it provides the same thing, only it's level versus a depression that's an ankle twister for kids. I don't care how you do it. It doesn't matter to me.
I understand the ankle twister, but I'm not good with a trench. I'm good with a swale where it spreads out over the back of the yard.
Okay.
And Dave and I have talked about this, and we're on the same page.
Okay.
I think members who want to look at what a swale of a smaller size, if you walk along Willow Road past 170 and take a left onto Furbish, the Audubon Society has created a small swale into the Audubon Preserve from the street because that whole corner was often wet. There was a big puddle and it was muddy. So rocks were put there and you can see some crushed rock in a swale that goes down, that creates a spout back into the swamp, back into the Audubon Preserve. It's obviously much smaller scale than what's being proposed here, but if somebody wants to walk by and look at that, that's what Audubon Society did to redirect the water.
So I guess the question is, conceptually, is the commission on board for him to pursue having a plan drawn up so we can have a record of what goes in, what needs to stay, that it'll, I think there needs to be a record of it. I think in a written agreement with the neighbor, just on paper saying it's okay for this to come to my property. So I guess, is the commission conceptually on board with that?
We asked him to get an engineer, which is what he's done. We asked for more, intellectual heft to really give us some directions about how to manage this problem. And it sounds like that's happened. So we just have to see the plans from the engineer.
I agree. I just want to make sure. I don't want him to spend the money if this is not what the commission wants to see.
I'm on board with it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm on board. I think it's good.
Okay. Tom,
I'm on board.
I'm,
Mark,
I'm okay. Yep. The
Eden?
neighbors on downstream seem to be also in favor of this approach. So
okay. Do any neighbors or anyone from the public wish to opine on this? Okay. So, David, did the engineer indicate a time frame that he would be able to prepare something? If
He
we were
said
on
once
board?
he's back, it should only take him a couple days and he should have it out to you. So I'll provide him your information.
Okay,
He's back tomorrow, which was, he got delayed. He was supposed to be back today. He got delayed because all that stuff going on right now. No one can catch a flight on time.
yep.
But he is, yeah, he said once he gets back, he'll start working on it for us.
Okay. So perhaps, do you want to also be on the August 31st meeting? I don't want to lengthen that meeting. However,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
2 weeks
that's
from
fine.
now, if you think you can be ready. Otherwise, you lose another month.
No, we'll definitely be ready by then. So that's fine.
Okay. Is the commission okay with adding?
Sure.
Yep.
Agreed.
I mean, once we have a plan, I think it should be a pretty straightforward conversation.
Okay.
Okay. So if we're all cool with that, let's continue the meeting to our August 31st meeting.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Thank you.
David.
Thank you.
We just need to vote on it. Is there a motion to continue?
I move.
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay. Eden, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Colleen,
Aye.
Tom,
I don't know if I should vote, Kristen. I wasn't on for the whole thing.
okay, that's fine. Skylar,
Aye.
and I am an aye. Did I forget anybody?
Henry, but I'm okay.
Henry, God, I'm sorry. Everybody's face isn't showing up on my screen because there's so many people. I'm sorry. Henry, you're also an aye?
Yes.
Okay, so it passes 6-0-1 with Tom abstaining. Okay, next up, the continued notice of intent for 12 Spouting Horn Road, DEP file number 0470595. Request to install a pool, paver patios, and a paver driveway within buffer zone to coastal bank and sheeting and aluminum beach access stairs within coastal bank. Would anybody like to speak to this?
Thank you. Tony Capichetti for the applicant, Jeffrey Sow. Just kind of returning to the project. If you don't mind, I'll share my screen. Oh, or do you have the plan?
Nope,
to
go
share?
ahead. I just allowed it.
All right. And hopefully you can all see the plan. We've been here a couple of times. What we're seeking to construct is a porous paver patio around the pool in the 100-foot buffer to a coastal bank, and then a pea stone walkway area to the rear of the house, porous paver driveway, and the house addition and improvements were previously permitted under a separate notice of intent. So after the site visit and talking to the commission, as well as the abutter, what we did was we removed the sheet piling that was previously proposed behind the house and looked to go to softer, softscape style treatments in line with the Office of Coastal Zone Management's Smart Coast program. And what they recommend is improving infiltration above the coastal bank to stop water from running over the coastal bank in most storms. So we've proposed a low-lying depression. And I apologize, my computer's kind of being a little laggy tonight. What we've done is where the swale used to come and just overtop the bank, kind of in the general area of the proposed aluminum stairs to the shore. We now have a depression that'll spread the runoff over a portion of about 50 feet of the coastal bank. And then at the top of the coastal bank, we're proposing jute netting and some beach grasses and other hardy root zone landscaping plants to be supplemented in with the existing vegetation. And that jute netting will extend down to the path. There's a pathway easement that runs along that bank.
Can I interrupt? I'm taking minutes. You said there's some kind of netting. Could you describe the netting again?
Yeah, it's jute netting. We submitted a cut sheet, so it's a
I
jute mat.
see. Yes, okay. And that's
So we should.
this softscape, what did you call it? Ocean softscape?
So Coastal Zone Management has a smart coast program, and they have, I believe, 6 different handouts about how to work within proximity to coastal bank, as well as to reinforce the coastal bank. They talk about adding landscaping, vegetation, use of jute mats, actually detail on the plan.
Thank you.
Is down in the lower left corner, has that jute mat coming up to the top of the coastal bank, and then it is trenched in with a 1 foot, 6 inch by 6 inch trench that is backfilled. Right here, it's backfilled with a dense grade material that's compacted and kind of acts as an anchor, and then it's filled over and rolled down the bank. So it's embedded into the bank and then buried over at the top, and then exposed going down the bank. It's a very durable form of erosion control. You can see the 6 inch by 6 inch compacted backfill anchor with a little bit of damp soil over the blanket, and then it wraps up around itself, and then it's a 12 inch overlap on itself. And then they use photodegradable staples to secure the netting onto the bank. And the idea is the underlying existing vegetation, if it's woody vegetation, will be sliced. The mat will be sliced and placed around it. Otherwise, grassy type vegetation will grow through it and kind of interweave into the jute netting and form a secure, durable erosion protection over that bank. Some of the other questions that came up was the runoff that comes from the abutter's house and the yard. There's about 14,000 square feet of surface area that runs down. It currently runs down. You can see where the contour is kind of curved in this area. That represents a valley. It runs down into this valley and out over the coastal bank. What we've proposed is a swale that is 5 feet wide at its narrowest point, 2 foot bottom, 6 inch depth. The water will run into this swale at 1%, run around, and come into the depression as previously described, spill out over 50 feet, spreading that runoff in larger events across the bank. In smaller events, it'll sit and infiltrate into the sandy soils at the top of the bank. To simulate a frost situation, we had frozen ground, and then we had a 100-year rainstorm. We used the new Atlas 14 rainfall event, which is over 8 inches. It's the extreme precipitation events. Over that 14,000 square feet, you get runoff, assuming it was all paved, of 2.5 CFS. In this swale that comes around, the swale has a capacity of 4.5 CFS. So we're almost 100, or we are 180% of the 100-year extreme precipitation values with a completely paved watershed, the capacity of that swale. So the concerns of the abutter about flooding and overtopping and coming into the pool are not founded. So we're able to contain that. Other items that were asked for by the board was examples of the gangways and steps that will be going down. They are an open configuration. They're slotted. They're between 40 and 50% openness ratio for the stairs. And then there's no backing or kick plate on these. They're open and exposed. So sunlight will get through these and continue to allow the vegetation below it to grow. They are all aluminum, lightweight, and designed for removal as needed. We've provided additional landscaping plans showing the proposed beach grass, and then more hardier beach grass as we go down the slope, and then some pitch pine I'm sorry, yeah, pitch pine, not pin oak, pitch pine coming down the bank to supplement some of the bare areas. And as we've always stated, there's a couple of railroad ties and some other debris on the bank that we'd like to just pluck out of there, so it doesn't represent a falling hazard down onto the beach. We did receive a late transmittal tonight from the abutters engineer, bringing up a couple of points. So the abutters engineer, Engineering Alliance, claims that the local bylaw extends resource areas 100 feet from the resource area. So we would now, instead of be working in the coastal bank buffer zone under the Nahant Wetlands Protection Bylaw, or their reading of it, we're in the resource area itself. However, if you look at the state performance standards for work in a coastal bank, you can work on a coastal bank. You cannot affect wave action. You cannot affect sediment transport. We have this, this bank is pretty rocky and ledgy, does not provide sediment for beach nourishment below. It's a rocky intertidal coast in this area, or intertidal shore. It's not a sandy beach, so that's not something that's of issue here. We don't affect wave action. The 100-year flood elevation, the velocity zone is at elevation 27. The only work we have is that temporary open staircase coming down and over. Because it's open, you're not going to have water running up, and it can be removed during or in advance of larger storm events, and then again in the winter. So it's not in that area. And also, my reading of the wetland bylaw is it's never been that the resource area itself extends 100 feet, except in the case of land subject to coastal storm flowage. I believe that was the intent of the bylaw, was because there is no performance standard for land subject to coastal storm flowage, and Nahant has a very rigorous performance standard for that and the 100 feet from the land subject to coastal storm flowage. We did provide calculations showing that we're under the 5,000 square foot threshold for work within that area. Actually, including the house, we're at about 4,200 square feet of total impervious area in that 100-foot buffer, but we're disturbing about 4,800 square feet, including the driveway out in front of the house, some of the landscaping, the stairs in this area, as well as the P-stone area. We do recognize that the commission did bring up, this is a little bit more of an ask than was originally brought to them when the house came in. That's why we did cut the patio back just to the doorway. And then we have this P-stone area, which serves a similar purpose. It allows some access in the sitting area here, but also promotes infiltration. And if you remember seeing the house, this is kind of an open deck. So it provides similar to a drip edge on the corner of a house to pick up that water that'll be coming off the deck. Rather than hitting the grass surface directly, it'll hit the P-stone area, so it will not cause any erosion. If there's any questions from the commission, I'd be more than happy to answer them, and I appreciate you giving me the time to go over all the changes.
So I apologize to the commission. I wasn't able to share the comments from the abutters engineer. I got them at 6:30 today night. So just a couple of things I just want to touch on about the comments from the engineer. I think their interpretation of our bylaw is incorrect. As Tony said, it's 100 feet from coastal storm flowage. It's not related to coastal bank. They do bring up an interesting point though, and that is, as I'm looking at this, the gray sections where there aren't stairs, what is the intention? What is there that that will be traversed?
So that's that gangway detail.
Yeah. But are those levels? Is it level in those locations?
Yes, it's a level gangway that sits on top of the the drill piles
Yeah.
that we talked about that would be placed along the wall. So they would just sit within that section. So it's a level open series of sections that you would walk on. So we would not be walking or traversing upon the coastal bank.
So the gangways and the upper sections of stairs will stay and the lower section will be removed seasonally. Is that accurate?
No, the intent is to pull up the lower section, the gangway, and this section up to here. It would just be this upper section above the 100-year flood elevation.
So where's
would
that
remain.
all going to go every year? I mean, that's a pretty significant amount of stuff to pull out. I'm wondering if that's more damaging, dragging it in and out every year.
It's,
I mean, it's not going to be an easy thing to pull out.
No, so they come in small sections. We
Yeah.
talked to the landscape architect, talked to the manufacturer. So they're brought down to sections that can be lifted by 2 people. It is not so there may be 6 to 8 feet, depending on the portion, a little longer for the flat sections because they don't have the odd shape and angle as the lower portion on the stairs would.
Long meeting. I don't know how it got.
Yeah.
But the intent is to remove everything to basically this set of stairs that comes down to the pathway.
And so will that be stored on site?
If allowed, if it has to be stored and trucked offsite, is something that we could live with.
Where is it we're thinking we'd store it?
I would think along the side of the house or pieces in the garage if necessary. But they would be stacked on top of each other, 8-foot sections. So you probably need 16 feet by 6 feet.
Okay. Are they going to want them in the front of the house? Or are they going to try to utilize that section where there's nothing in the back here?
Could also go in this small section here. If the commission wants to restrict something, I mean, we could also leave it on the patio where we have a nice flat area as well, and fenced and secured.
And why the gangway part? Why not continue the stair straight? What was the thinking behind that?
Tony, I can weigh in there if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll let Peter White was the landscape architect. I'll let him discuss the gangway.
That was the area the owner felt it was easiest to bring their kayaks off the water. Is that point, the shore and the rockiness was the friendliest of a coarse shoreline.
So is the section where it goes down to the water actually past their property line?
No, our property line runs down.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a very odd shaped property.
So they own the neighbor's coastal bank.
And portions of the riprap slope, yes.
Huh, yeah. Interesting. Okay. So why does the gangway need to be that long? Is it because that's an easier section to get down there?
Yeah, and that's along the concrete.
Yeah. It follows the concrete wall and then returns at the end of the concrete wall out to the bank. Mm-hmm. So it looked like a good place that we could anchor on the edge of the seawall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And parallel that and then go along.
Okay. Where's the water going to go when they have to drain it down every winter?
Won't be drained,
but
the minor amount of water that would be pulled off the surface of the pool to winterize it below skimmers can be pumped out to the street. It wouldn't be pumped off to the back.
Is there a catch basin in the street? I think that's also not legal.
So
I mean, you can pump it across the lawn, I guess, but you can't.
Yeah, my recommendation would be the depression. They sell dechlorinating tablets, or you can just let the water sit. On the north end of a commission, which I'm on, we have a standing condition that requires that before covering the pool and draining it, it sits in the sunlight for 4 days. That'll kill all effective chlorine. Then pump it down onto the grass for infiltration. And then you can add your pool chemicals and close the pool. And it has a retractable safety cover. So it's a pretty pretty easy covering operation on the pool, and it'll be covered when not in use.
Okay. So what are the pool chemicals that are being used? I thought it was it's a saltwater pool, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
So a saltwater pool is kind of a misnomer. There's still chlorine in the water. What it does is it takes the sodium, the salt ions, the sodium and the chlorine, and through electrolysis splits them into sodium, which is absorbed in the chlorinator, and then free chlorine in the pool. But it's not like there's chlorine stored and used in large quantities. It's from the dissolving or the ionization of the salt. So there is still a trace amount of chlorine, about 1 part per million to 3 parts per million.
Okay.
So it's recommended that before you dewater or drain out the pool, it sits in the sun for about 2 or 3 days. We usually recommend 4 days without adding any chemicals, and that will get you down to negligible amounts of chlorine, basically tap water.
Okay.
What did you I think we talked about this before, but the pool equipment's going to go next
Tucked
to
in
the
this
house
corner
there.
here,
Okay.
behind the existing retaining
Oh,
wall.
yeah. Sorry, I see it now. Okay.
And it'll be a cartridge type system, no diatomaceous earth, no sand filters, nothing that requires backwashing.
Okay. Anything else from the commission before we open it to the public? Okay.
I just had one question, really. I just was curious, trying to understand it. Up at the top there, it says proposed 4-foot high cedar post and rail fence within the site easement area. Doesn't that block the easement area, or is it on the outside of it? I'm not sure what that
So,
meant.
there's specific language in the site easement that allows for a 4-foot high post and rail fence only. So that is, once we hit this point from the standard decorative fence, we will meet along this portion. Again, to here, the standard that is specified in the site easement that we share with the abutters and other members of the subdivision.
So people walk between the two fences, is that the idea?
Yeah, so this easement serves a lot further down the road to give them access to the beach. It brings them down to the path and eventually to the water. It is a little treacherous, but it is an access easement that is needed. And then the opposite side is with a compliant pool fence. So that has to be 5 feet solid, or at least to the point that you can't put someone's head through. I think it's 4-inch spacing of the slats.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to weigh in?
Good evening, members of the Conservation Commission. My name is Jason Panos, for the record, practicing law at 246 Andover Street, Peabody, Massachusetts. And I'm here on behalf of the abutter at 8 Spouting Horn Road, Paul Ferragamo and his wife. We still have significant concerns about this proposal. I know the commission at the site visit and at the previous hearing were concerned, and we remain concerned about the over-intensity of the use of the property. And I think that point is driven home when you actually did the site visit and realize how small this property is. And how close to the resource areas. And with all due respect, I read your bylaw several times and I simply don't interpret it the way you do. I believe that according to your local bylaw, they're doing the entirety of the work within the resource area as defined in your bylaw. And I'll get into that in a moment. Unfortunately, our engineer, Mr. Salvo, was not able to attend, so I'm going to have to play engineer, and I use that term loosely. But we are concerned about the over-intensity of the use of the property, coupled with the fact that, you know, this really should have been a part of the NOI that allowed the house expansion, which process we did not oppose, and resulted in the issuance of an order of conditions. And, you know, the fact that the applicant continues to present his own application through his professionals, I mean, just calls into question the veracity of his intentions. You know, he doesn't appear at hearings and didn't even appear at the site visit. And it's the applicant's NOI filing, not the professionals he's hired. As you indicated, Tony, Mr. Ferragamo hired Richard Salvo of Engineering Alliance to review the notice of intent application, the plans, and did a site visit today. And I apologize that his memo was transmitted to you at such a late hour, but it was prepared rather recently. And I gave it to you as soon as I had it. But in summary, and I'm sorry, did someone say something?
No, go ahead.
Thank you. Tony, do you mind putting the memo back up? I can do it through share screen as well, but it might be easier for the board to read if you have it handy. Thanks a lot. So the first thing he called out, and we've read your bylaw provision several times, and the definition is very clear. It says any resource area deemed significant to the protection of the values specified in section 1 of the Nahant Wetlands Protection Bylaw, and includes any, black and white, any wetland defined herein, and lands within 100 feet of any wetland. Well, when you look at the definitions, you've got a definition for wetland, any freshwater or coastal wetland, land subject to flooding or inundation by groundwater or surface water, or land subject to coastal storm flowage or flooding. That's wetlands. You've got another definition for coastal wetlands. When we review the provision with regard to land subject to coastal storm flowage, those in our opinion just prescribe a set of standards for work done within that particular resource area. It doesn't limit the bylaw only to that resource area. And it seems to me that you have a 16-page bylaw that is all-encompassing, not just focused on one specific resource area. No, it's not. It defines several different types of resource areas. So according to your bylaw, it is a very reasonable interpretation that it extends the laterals of all of the resource areas prescribed in federal and state statutes and regulations out 100 feet. And according to that definition, all of the work proposed here is jurisdictional within a resource area. And at the very least, and I spoke with Mr. Salvo for a little more clarification on this, the information provided to the Conservation Commission is lacking, because we need more information with regard to the impacts of the stair anchoring system, for example, on the bank, and the work generally applied for, which includes 3 patios, a swimming pool, and then when you add to it the addition to the house, we need to know that none of this is going to cause erosion to the coastal bank. As I said, not only from the stairs, but the other work, and that information hasn't been provided to us. Mr. Salvo further and I'm summarizing in point 1, wants to know a little bit more about how you arrive at compliance with DEP policy 92.1 regarding the definition and designation of slopes within coastal banks. And he recommends more information needs to be provided with regard to transects and cross sections on the plan.
Oh, they're trying to make this.
I'm sorry.
Continue.
Okay. He's also suggesting in point number 2 that we need an overall demonstration that the work will not interfere with the integrity or compromise the coastal bank. It's not only the pool we're talking about, as I indicated, it's the house addition, it's the 3 patios, it's the swale, it's the depression, it's all of the work in totality being done in a resource area, at the very least in a buffer zone.
I think you're on mute.
I'm sorry, am I back on mute? Am I back on unmute?
You're good.
Yeah.
All right. At what point, I apologize, did I fall out?
I don't know.
A few seconds ago.
I'm sorry, what?
Just a few seconds ago. You're good.
Oh, okay. So in any event, the third point he raises goes to the question of the chair, which is what procedures are establishing for draining the pool or treatment of the backwash to ensure that the activities will not disturb or erode the coastal bank. We're concerned about this, particularly in light of the comment that they are even considering draining water into the street, whether or not it has catch basins. That water is going to go into Mr. Ferragamo's lawn. It's going to go into his abutting property, and that would be totally unacceptable to him. And as the chair indicated, or one of the other members, I apologize, is not legal to drain pool water. On the other hand, you're talking about draining chlorinated pool water into a resource area. So what are the procedures? Let's get those in writing and understand that a little better. Then he goes on to conclude that and you talked about this a little bit, but the plan seems to indicate a walkway located between the proposed stairs that extend from the top of the coastal bank to the coastal beach. The material and grading of the walk should be confirmed. We talked a little bit about that. Also, the more information is required relative to the techniques that will be utilized to anchor the stairs to the coastal bank. Again, we need to know this so that we understand that there's no further degradation of the coastal bank. You're doing work within the coastal bank. The applicant should demonstrate the impacts to the coastal bank associated with the stairs and walkway to ensure compliance with 310 CMR 1030, section 3. And this was something I kind of recommended a while ago. I think at the last hearing, I think my comment was more along the lines of peer review at the expense of the applicant. Well, you can refer this for further review to the Office of Coastal Zone Management for free. No one has to pay anything, and you're getting a second set of eyes to look at this in light of the comments that and issues that we've raised here. And I think it's a totally reasonable ask to have that second set of eyes look at this. After, of course, the information that we think is appropriate is provided. So with that, we still have concerns. As this is presented, we are in opposition to this application, and we thank the Conservation Commission for considering our point of view and for hopefully considering our concerns in making its decision. But we would hope that you would continue this application to ask for this additional information before making a decision on this notice of intent application. And with that, if you have any questions of me, I'm happy to answer them.
Tony, do you have any, do you care to respond to any of that?
Just, I think I've touched on most of it in my presentation. The pool drainage, as I said, go into the depression, dechlorinating before any discharge. It's a cartridge system, so there is no backwash. There's no issues with that. It's not a diatomaceous earth system. Just wanted to touch on, so policy 92.1 has this handout that comes along with it, just to kind of explain how the coastal zone or the limit of the coastal bank was determined. There's a series of figures based off of the slope. And this water line is the 100-year storm line. What you do is if you have a slope, which we have, which is less than 4:1 coming up, it would be at the limit of the top of bank. However, we have some portions that are greater than 4:1 and then level out, but below the, trying to find the figure. Yeah, so
Patio.
right here, greater than 4:1. The land subject to coastal storm flowage is below the top of the bank, and then it becomes shallow to less than 4:1. It is the top of the bank. It is where that break and slope is. And on our site plan, you'll see the contours are all very close until they separate. So I mean, we've even accommodated for this. What we did was a slope zone analysis using the CAD program on the surface, and we found the area where the slope broke from less than 4:1 to greater than 4:1, and that's what this line represents. So I mean, the delineation of the coastal bank, again, whether we accepted the definition that the coastal bank went to here, performance standards for coastal banks. Basically, if it's determined to be significant to storm damage prevention or flood control because it supplies sediment to a coastal beach, this does not. So 3, 4, and 5 do not apply. It's a significant storm damage prevention or flood control because it is a vertical buffer to stormwaters, which is what we are. Your standards are any project shall have no adverse effect on the stability of the bank. We're a gunite pool, self-supporting. We're using helical piles to support, so those are vertical loads, and if anything, tighten the soil on the bank. We're not proposing bulkheads, revetments, seawalls, groins, or other coastal engineering, so that doesn't apply. And we don't have an adverse habitat on adverse rare species, adverse effect on rare species, and we're actually providing the open stairways as required. So even if we were in the coastal bank, we meet the performance standard as indicated in the Wetlands Protection Act. There are no more restrictive standards or performance standards in the local bylaw for coastal bank. As I said, it was only the land subject to coastal storm flowage. So if there's any specific questions from the commission, I'm more than happy to answer them, but I just wanted to provide that other information for the commission.
If I may, through the chair, wouldn't the whole anchoring system for that very long set of stairs that you're going to pull out and reinstall year after year be considered an engineering structure? And shouldn't we, second question, shouldn't we understand the impacts of that anchoring system on the coastal bank itself and what those impacts might be as you reinstall and pull them out annually?
Trying to bring a picture up of
Only the anchoring systems don't get removed.
Right, just trying to bring a picture up of the helical pile itself. So I apologize. But
How
as
will
you can
those be
see, they put on a
installed?
mini track machine. It's screwed into the ground.
How are they going to do that from above, that far down?
You'd use a mini excavator with the longer boom. They go up to about 20 foot on the extended boom and the counterweight on the back of the excavator. So you would, I mean, they're small rubber tired track machines, and then they're drilled into the ground, and all that's left is a small 1 foot pipe stub that's up. And these are actually fairly large for what we're looking at. It'd probably be more similar to something like this. It's more of a smaller screw system. So it's less intrusive than a fence post when done.
It's like a corkscrew.
But how many of them through the chair are you installing throughout that entire coastal bank area?
So every 8 foot section would have essentially 4 of them.
I guess my bigger concern is from the top of the slope, how are you going to use an arm to get to that very bottom section of stairs?
You can use a hand auger for the very bottom section.
I mean, even for the middle boardwalk section, I mean, that's a pretty significant vertical distance from the edge. I mean, how close do you really want to get to the edge of the coastal bank with that machine without it tumbling down or compromising the bank?
Yeah, so the longer the reach, the bigger the counterweight, and it would sit over by the bank. Again, they have smaller ones that go, essentially just need to get down to the cross line at about 4 feet. There's not a huge weight bearing capacity needed. So they do have hand augers. So they would go down with the hand auger for those. It's kind of a 2-person gas powered auger that will also install the screws.
So are they going to work from the top down and then put the walkway in as they go so they can get down there?
So they can access, yes, they would install the 8 foot sections. They do the 4, kind of come down. This section here is flat with the pathway. So it would be kind of it would not interrupt the pathway. And then they would move down the slope, putting sections of stairs in as they go. These here, we may epoxy anchors onto the retaining wall, and then just do the uphill side.
But I keep asking the question, and I apologize for being repetitive. How many of these are you going to pile drive into the coastal bank? And where's the demonstration that it's not going to contribute to the instability of the coastal bank?
Well, the helical piles like this are used to stabilize soil. They bite into the soil and adhere to it. So it's not going to adversely affect the stability. There's probably 100 feet. So you're looking at every 8 feet. So it'd be 25 going up and then 25 coming down. So you're looking at about 50 of these helical piles.
And what about the cross walkway, the gangway?
The gangway, like I said, I'm assuming that we would have to put them for both sides. We might be able to eliminate 10 of them along the side if we can epoxy anchors onto the existing retaining wall.
My other question through the chair is, you know, we had a mild nor'easter today. And you're basically taking high velocity winds on the nose in this very area. Actually, Mr. Ferragamo probably takes more of it than you guys do, but you're still going to take it. And how do we know that an epoxy system is not going to wash away or be terribly damaged, along with this whole stairwell system in such a storm event, such a heavy storm event, where we're getting more and more king high tides, higher, rising sea levels. We're getting more coastal flooding. We're getting more adverse effects from climate change that is only exacerbated by, you know, by these storm events that we're seeing more and more of.
I'm not a structural engineer, however, I can tell you my experience. We do a lot of layout work for high rises in Boston. We've done interlock in Boston. It's standard procedure that you drill an epoxy anchor bolts. So if it can handle a column supporting a 22-story building, they just have to be designed properly. The epoxy that they use, and again, even in seawall repairs that we've done here, when you scab on, you take the existing reinforcement and you drill epoxy the anchors in. So it's a pretty standard procedure. I mean, the final design will be done by a structural engineer for the epoxy. It's a matter of getting the approval, and if the commission desires a submittal for that final design, we could do that prior to construction.
Look, again, I'm just going to reiterate, this is an over-intensification of use of this property, and I think that this is my opinion, that the Conservation Commission would be well served to have this looked at by a second set of eyes to make sure that you know, our concerns are either validated or not. And we have a free service through the Office of Coastal Zone Management, as I mentioned, that would come out and look at this. And you know, we're already into August, so the hopes of salvaging a pool season this year are waning, if not eliminated. And I just don't think we ought to be rushing into this.
I guess through the chair, just one last comment about the coastal zone management. When you file a notice of intent, if you're working below the mean high water, which is, as you can see, almost 100 feet away from where our installation is going, that is when a notice of intent would be submitted to coastal zone management. And that is actually one of the checkboxes and requirements. We have no work below the mean high water. As far as a peer review, I think Mr. Salvo's review was pretty minor compared to the items that are out there. I think we've provided information. And as far as missing a pool season, I don't think Mr. Sal has any intention of being able to swim this year. However, it's having a contractor lined up. As anyone knows, since COVID, pools have taken off. A lot of people are doing staycations and staying home. So having a contractor able to perform the work, while there's one available this year, they may be booked already for next year. So it is something that we're looking to move ahead with if possible.
But going to the through the chair, coastal zone management review, while it may be triggered by work within that area, it's certainly not the only time they would come out if requested to.
Okay. I mean, so this NOI was submitted in December. DEP has had ample opportunity to comment. They have issued no comments. It's been 8 months. They haven't issued any comments on this. If they had any concerns, I would think we would have heard from them by now. Or maybe they're just waiting to appeal, who knows? They were quick to issue a file number and there haven't been any comments in the interceding 8 months. So I think, you know, while I don't disagree that this is an over-intensification of use on the property, it is their property to use, and as long as they comply with conservation laws, they're free to use it as they want, whether abutters like it or not. You know, we don't all get to agree with what our neighbors do, unfortunately. So I think we need to focus on our jurisdiction. Does the commission have any lingering questions or comments from things that were looked at the site visit and raised at the last meeting?
I have a question about something that was raised at this meeting.
Yeah.
If I may. What is the distance between the back of the house and the coastal bank? Like where that machine is going to go in to put the helical piles in? What is that distance?
So the physical delineation of the coastal bank to the corner of the house is just a hair over 15 feet. And this is the roof overhang that we're showing on the plan. So it's 15
Okay.
feet of clear space.
I mean, we
Okay.
can condition that they not use a machine, that they do them all by hand.
Well, I mean, that's my concern. I don't know what the counterweight looks like, but I'm envisioning it being kind of like an arm that comes off the other side of the machine, and I'm just, is there space, I guess, is my concern.
So the counterweight, can you see this piece here?
Uh-huh.
The very back of the machine, that is the counterweight, and they come in different sizes and different weights.
Okay,
So based off of the length of reach and the lift, these counterweights increase in size and weight and get added onto the back of the machine.
so they're just
not
directly onto the back of the machine.
Yep, so it's kind of like a seesaw.
Okay.
You want to have more weight on the back end here than what you
Sure.
have down the slope, so you
Sure.
don't get pulled down the slope.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I think it does make sense to try to dig all of these by hand, even though that's going to be a lot more work and maybe more expensive. It's a lot safer for the bank and the
I agree.
operator of the machines. Yeah.
Especially given the clearance at the top, the limited clearance at the top. I'd like to see them done by hand. I'd like to see the landscaping installed by hand. I mean, those are some decent sized trees that are going to be going down there. I want to make sure we're not using a big machine trying to get them down there.
I
So were
I
they-
have concerns.
Uh,
I
I
have
guess-
concerns about the number of these helical screws. How do we know that putting these screws in this long distance is not going to actually create flow through of water that can then cleave the land to come off? I mean, I don't feel very reassured that, first of all, there's dueling engineers here, or an attorney playing an engineer. They're dueling about whether or not they're actually on the coastal bank. And I would say that they are on the coastal bank. And so my concern is if you put these anchors, these helical screws all along, what's to say, depending on the soil analysis, that you're not going to actually cleave off a whole shelf? I don't understand how that won't happen. Because unless you're anchoring into granite, that's sandy soil. That's sandy and soft, rocky intertidal area. It could potentially, I don't have full reassurance that this is not going to damage the bank further. I would favor getting additional information from the Office of Coastal Zone Management, again, because they would be a neutral party who could actually answer some of these questions. I mean, what's at risk here is so great that I think it behooves us to take the time to make sure that this kind of work is not going to irreparably damage the coastal bank.
So here's a better representation. It took me a while. This is what we're talking about that's in the coastal bank when it's all said and done. They have smaller kind of trailer mounted machines with arms. And what you're talking about is drilling an 1.5-inch pipe directly into the slope. This is also something that's done to stabilize slopes. If you ever hear of tiebacks and anchors, this is the system that would be done. It's done at an angle into the slope, but it's very minimally intrusive, and that's why we proposed it. So the idea is you kind of have this pipe, you put a screw on top that allows you to mount to the piers, but when all is said and done, you're looking at about 1.5 inch disturbance to the soil. It's capped and it's screwed in and held tight. We'd be willing to add 6 inches of bentonite around it, so there'd be no water intrusion if that's something that the commission would entertain. And bentonite, all that is plain kitty litter. Once that gets wet, it solidifies and stops water from running in. They use that around monitoring wells a lot. And that's simple. That's similar to what you're getting. Is it similar to a monitoring well installation? Has that been your experience as well, Peter?
Yes, this is the most common anchoring, least disruptive anchoring system for docks and stairs down banks. This is employed because of all the concerns that are being expressed.
All right. Anybody else on the commission?
I guess on the same thing, I mean, what happens when they're putting that in and then they find that there's a crack in the rock? And it's not gonna hold. I mean, if there's a crack, you put epoxy, just runs right down the bank and the whole thing can break right off.
You drill these corkscrew piers until they stop. So when you hit rock, it stops and it's doing the function that you want it to do. It's holding into the ground. They're not there to necessarily support the system. It's more there to keep it anchored to the soil from wind and pull. So you're not trying to get into the bedrock. You're going down to frost if there's no bedrock.
If I may, I have a question through the chair. As I'm looking at the plan, how much of this is being driven into the retaining wall itself? And I understand the retaining wall is over 60 years old. Has anybody tested the structural integrity of the retaining wall? And will that too be potentially compromised structurally?
So before Mr. Sal bought the house, that's how Hayes was involved. We did a structural analysis. Peter Ogren, who does a lot of seawalls, actually did a report for the stability of that wall. So that's how we got involved. Then Mr. Sal, through the builder, did the addition, and then when we got into the work in the coastal bank buffer zone, he engaged us again to do the permitting for that. So that wall has been evaluated by Peter Ogren, who does a lot of retaining wall designs. Again, we could helical pile behind the wall. Just looking at the wall, it may make sense to just epoxy the supports because there's plenty of vertical capacity for this wall. It's holding nothing up from a vertical load. It's all a horizontal load from the pressure of the bank. And if anything, additional vertical load would make it more stable.
So interestingly, I was looking at the report that Peter did, and he notes that there's significant erosion on the northerly end of the wall, which needs to be addressed. I assume we're not addressing that as part of this.
We have not proposed anything, and that's in this area here.
Yeah,
we could add some soil jute matting and some plantings in that area.
he said that there's some deficiencies in the wall that require further investigation and repair, particularly the footing that appears to be undermined in some areas. I mean, if you're placing additional things, it may be worth addressing that at the same time.
So we can definitely come back, and propose some additional riprap to shore up those areas. But
the other scenario is that you could get rid of the walkway and go straight down, and that would eliminate a number of anchors. And you also wouldn't then epoxy into the retaining wall, right? It just maybe wouldn't land in the exact location on the beach.
In that fashion there.
Yeah. So you'd eliminate all of the horizontal anchors that would be needed, or any of the epoxy. Yeah.
Do you have an issue with that, Peter?
I don't, and I'm not sure that Jeff would either. We would just have to check. Partially, we were going over to that side, getting closer to the angle of the neighbor's walk down the beach. The neighbor has a boardwalk going down, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. We just have to confirm with Jeff when he's back. Yeah.
And if that's the remaining concern of the commission, we could easily update the plan and get it to you rather quickly.
Modify the plan to have a straight, continue the staircase.
You got
off
it?
off the landing at the top of the concrete wall. Yep.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I think, and
But also, I
I
just.
think
saw
the
it.
original
Look at-
intent was
oh,
to
look at the
parallel
video now. Look at that piece of property. You
that
know,
access.
yeah, look
So we
at
came down
that.
and parallel.
Interesting for
What
what?
we're talking about now is coming straight in this direction, which I don't think is an issue.
Too. You know, I mean, just listening.
Margaret, can you mute yourself?
So just listening for maybe for you guys in the future.
I can't find her.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if we could go more straight, it would certainly be better.
Yeah.
And if we need to, you know.
I think we can.
The next,
Here we go. Yeah. I think we can accommodate that.
I guess, I mean, I initially thought that we needed to go to the end of the seawall to come down, but if we don't need to go to the end of the seawall and you can come down from the middle of the seawall, then it's kind of a no-brainer, I feel like.
Although it does beg the question, I don't believe it's allowed in the site easement. So I think that was part of the issue that got us there. Although
I'm sorry, I'd also add that I think in the past, there had been a discussion of the flow of water directly towards the stair versus the flow of water on an angle. This is Chris Patsky from Zenesis.
Yes. Yeah, so the wave coming up and down an open stair versus coming across in this direction also adds some additional forces to the stairs.
Another thought, have you looked at the stairs going directly up, sort of horizontal in the drawing right now, towards the site boundary, like go down, yeah, right there, and left, like all the way up to the top. Keep going straight. So it'd just be a straight run all the way up from the part almost where it says proposed fence on the left-hand side of your drawing. No.
So we do have when we were discussing this line here, is supposed to, everything seaward of this line is supposed to be kept clear of man-made structures.
No, I was
excepting-
saying the south side of the property line. Yeah, just go straight east from that. Yeah, exactly. Just go straight to the ocean, straight like that.
We would have to cut into the bank because of the rise run relationship of a staircase.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we brought it only as far over to the center of the house as we needed to stay. So we didn't have to cut into the bank and to stabilize it. And so we could accommodate the path easement. We originally wanted it to come further south down the page. But the rise run calculation doesn't allow us to do that.
Okay.
I apologize for the movement. My computer seems to be taking a mind of its own right now.
All right, so for the commission, where are we at here? Where does everybody feel like they're at? How does let's break it into pieces, I guess. We don't have to approve it all. We can approve it all. We can continue. We have a bunch of choices. So, I mean, what's everyone's feeling on the pool and patio situation? Where we are now versus what we had requested that they do. We, suggested some things at the site walk. They made those changes.
I think it's convincing the water runoff and the design of that far exceeding the 100-year flood. It seems to me that the biggest concern is the bank and the stairs throughout this conversation, not the pool, patio, water at the top.
I agree. I mean, going out there, I certainly feel like they're putting too much stuff on the property, but it's their property to fill, I guess. The top is complying with what we've asked them to do. If we did approve it, I think there needs to be a number of conditions about pumping out the pool, how it can be done, where it can go, that kind of stuff.
The other question is whether you could, nothing more condition. I don't know if we could do such a thing, but.
Is there room for more?
I don't know.
I think they filled it up. I mean, I'm okay with the pool and patio. It's in the new paver driveway. I'm more concerned about the stairs.
Especially when you see how many other things around Nahant and other places get washed away from one big storm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, are the owners living there now?
Peter, do you know if they're living there?
They may be now. They weren't last time I was at the site. They may have now moved in.
I mean, would they be consider living through a nor'easter season and seeing what happens before we move forward with a stairwell down there? I mean, they haven't seen what happens through a winter storm season yet.
That's a good question, but I think the tendency is to rely on the engineers to provide, they don't want to build something that's going to get a storm is going to take it out. That's for sure. That there's the common sense involved here. And if there needs to be more engineering data to come back about how this anchoring system is the preferred system to protect the resource area and designed for the conditions that this site incurs, I think they would be open to that. It's kind of, if there's no big nor'easter this year, that year of time doesn't help them.
Yep. I don't know. I'm not sold on the walkway, but I'm okay with the pool and patio. Personally.
I think we should vote on whether or not we feel that the issue about the coastal bank and the stairway, it could be assessed by this Office for Coastal Zone Management. I think we need more information that we just don't have. We're all sort of raising concerns, but we don't really know the answer to a lot of those concerns. And I don't see why that's not a valid, really reasonable thing to do. I am also okay with the pool and patio, but I really have concerns about all those anchors and the stairs and whether that's all the work to put that in is going to damage the coastal bank.
I agree. I think a peer review makes a lot of sense, and maybe figuring out a different, I don't know what that solution would be. It sounds like you guys have tried a whole bunch of different solutions, but it seems like if there is erosion on that retaining wall, and if I have concerns about these piles going into the bank, you know, what's the state of the vegetation going to be when those piles are put in? I don't know. I have a lot of concerns. I'm very reluctantly okay with the pool and patio.
Can I seek a point of clarification through the chair? I apologize, but at the site visit, I distinctly remember that the commissioners who were present did not want to see any patio locations in front of the addition. And here we see even a pea stone area, and then we see what looks like an expanded patio area wrapping around the corner of the house. And we see almost the entire pool covered in hard impervious surface, except for the right-hand side of it, I guess.
Well, I don't think pavers
I don't think
are
that's accurate.
considered impervious surface. Is that
Okay.
correct?
Well, we can mandate pervious pavers for starters. I mean,
Yeah.
the size of the paver patio is smaller because they converted a portion of it to pea stone. Pea stone is the equivalent of gravel. It's pervious. You know, it's not any worse than grass. So they effectively cut off, like Tony's showing, that whole lower section used to be a paver patio, now it's pea stone.
Yeah. The only reason we included this is where the doorway is.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to have access to the patio. And I thought we discussed extending it only to the doorway opening when we were on site.
Yep.
As we've stated all the way through, the patio is a porous patio. They have 3/8 to a 1/2 inch gaps. It's overlain on crushed stone gravel surface, so it's designed to basically infiltrate itself. I know Peter and the owner spent considerable amount of time looking at different patterns. So these are long, narrow paver stones that have a lot of gap area around them. Because that was one of the things that was recommended when we first started this exercise.
Yes, we changed that from a granite paver to a pervious paver system at the request of the commission.
And we also, at the last commission meeting, ended up speaking about the potential for water storage beneath the pervious paver in the entire patio area around the pool.
Okay. Mark, what are your thoughts
Thank you.
for moving forward?
I think they've done pretty much. I mean, first I'll start with you, that I think filling up property that close to the water is silly, but it's theirs to do. But I'm, you know, the combination of the pavers and reducing the patio pavers, the proposed pool, I'm definitely more comfortable with. I have a lot of concern with the stairs. I mean, even the weight of a section of stairs and how they're going to pull it up when the time comes. I'm in the Dory Club. We live with a 25-foot ramp, you know, and we're trying to implement a method of trying to get some kind of a derrick that we can bring them up with, because it's unbelievable. And we have, you know, a team of 10 people bringing that up every year. And it's aluminum. We also had a guaranteed helix anchor put in the granite, and the guy that put it in didn't realize he touched the hole, so all the epoxy went down into the water and the thing broke off, and we almost lost a new float. I think that the whole stair thing, and that is highly risky and that needs a lot more work.
Okay. Tom, do you have any thoughts?
I'm okay with the pool and the patio. I'm really not so afraid of these helical anchors. I mean, they are proven technology.
I'm more concerned about the stairs and the opportunity for them to be blown to pieces and tossed around and.
Well, I think regardless of what kind of anchoring system you have, the storm will take it out.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay. Henry. Do you have any thoughts? Did we lose you? Oh, I lost.
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry about
That's
that.
okay.
So the pool is fine by me, I guess. The stairs, originally I was concerned with, it is the same system that they use at 40 steps. So I think the bottom set of stairs is the one that's concerning. And ultimately, it's at their own peril. You know, if they get destroyed, they're out, you know, a few $1,000. And I don't think, you know, there's a lot of cobble down there. I don't think it's going to cause any problems except for the homeowner.
Mhm.
But I think it's a lot. But
It's gonna end up in the ocean.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so what does everybody want to do? I mean, I've seen helical piers used in a lot of places. In my opinion, if we're putting them in, I think they should be by hand. I'm not enthused about having a big machine up there teetering over the edge, trying to reach as far as it can.
Fully agree.
So if we're gonna go with the stairs, I want them augured by hand. Personally.
Yeah, I agree.
So if theoretically we were to vote to approve or not approve, whatever everybody thinks, I would say that the chemicals would be letting them sit, I mean, the pool, letting them sit, letting it sit to let the chemicals diffuse, and then have rules about pumping down, can't pump to the street. The stair and gangway storage and removal, I'd like to specify. I don't want them sitting right on the top of the coastal bank all winter. I'd like them away from the coastal bank. The final structural that's prepared before the helical piers go in, I'd like to see a copy of it submitted to the commission. Erosion controls and the helical piers installed by hand.
And would you have a specific time that the lower set of stairs have to come? I assume it's only the section from the wall to the beach that gets removed.
No, they were saying all the way up.
Okay.
We would prefer only the lower section be required to be removed for obvious reasons. We thought that's what the commission wanted. So the design calls for it to be able to remove, but the preference would be the practical removal is that lower section.
And would we have a time that they have to, time of year that they have to be removed, and then a time that they could only be put in after?
We could certainly mandate that if we chose to. If it was, you know, October 1st or the end of October or something, and then goes back in April 1st or May 1st or something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We can mandate that. I mean, they're not going to be practically using that anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think that would make sense. Mandated installation and removal dates. Okay. Those are the things I was concerned about. So I think we got to make a decision about what we want to do here, because we still got a big item left. We got to keep moving. It's getting late. I'm less than enthused. I think they're overusing a piece of property, and they should have chosen a different piece of property if this is what they wanted. But I agree that the stairs are at their own peril. And as long as we're minimizing risk by having things installed by hand, I'm okay with it.
I'm okay as well.
Okay. So do we want to vote?
Sure. Sounds good to me.
Do
Move
I
forward.
hear, do I hear a motion to issue an order of conditions with the aforementioned conditions?
Yeah,
Somebody's
what do I
gonna
need
do
to
it to, do I hear a motion to issue an order of conditions with the aforementioned conditions that I listed?
So I just need to say a motion.
Yes. You so move.
I'll
Thank you,
second.
Scott. Thank you, Henry. Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote. Skylar, how do you vote?
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Colleen,
Nay.
Eden,
Nay.
and I'm an I. So it passes 5-2.
Thank you all for your time. I have one question for you, Kristen, before I go. Did I hear that you're leaving the commission?
Did
when I
what?
logged on. Did you say this is your last meeting?
It turns out August 31st will be my last meeting. Squeezing one
I
more.
don't believe I'll be there. So thank you for everything you've done so far for us, and I hope to cross paths again.
Thank you. It's nice working with you.
Thank
Okay,
you, Kristen.
next
Thank
up.
you, board.
Thank you, guys. The continued notice of intent for 430 Nahant Road, DEP file number 0470598, request to replace the existing seawater intake system and construct a new pump house within land under ocean, land containing shellfish, and subject to coastal storm flowage and buffer zone. Dwight, you want to jump in?
Yes. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the commission. We're glad to have this continued hearing. And basically, when we met last month, it was continued for the site visit, which we had at the end of July. Based on that site visit, there was a few questions, comments that were posed during the site visit. We provided a written response to those topics. If you want, I can review them. Otherwise, since it is getting a little late, hopefully everybody has seen them. Or if you want, Madam Chair, I can just do a Reader's Digest version of them.
Do you mind doing a quick overview for us?
Sure.
Thank you.
The first item was the area of the existing pump house, if that was to be included in the project. And that would be approximately an additional 455 square feet of alteration. That's the pump house itself, plus a 5-foot wide work area around it that might be needed to, remove the structure a few feet below grade and then regrade it. That brings all the work, as we mentioned, that's in LSCSF to 760 square feet, and then LSCSF plus all buffer zones. That's subject to the bylaw to 3980 square feet, so just below 4,000 square feet. The other item was whether or not the utility corridor could be, kind of modified a little bit so it wasn't so straight. And as I mentioned, when you look at the project plans, the work area that's associated with installing those 3 underground utilities is about 30 feet wide or so. So it becomes a straight, open area to install the utilities. So it doesn't, it includes the path as it is, plus additional work zone. So it doesn't really provide any benefit to try to modify those. So it's best to just keep those straight. And then will Northeastern replant the utility corridor? And, yes, you have the works, you have the construction laydown area, and then we have the work zone. Obviously, with a sewer line, you don't want, trees growing over it that the roots may go into it. So what we suggested was to, and I think we had talked about it out at the site visit, was before trees were cut, to have the trees marked that were going to be cut, that were proposed to be cut. Take a look at them with the chair or representative and determine if any of those could be, preserved and not cut. And we also suggested having a replanting plan developed as part before construction begins for review and comment by the Conservation Commission. So those were the items that were remaining after the last meeting and site visit. So if you have any questions on those.
Okay, thank you. For me, based on our site visit, it's a yes to removing the pump house. If we move forward, for me personally, the rest of the commission can give their opinion. I see no reason to leave it. It's a small disturbance. There's no reason to leave that as a relic just because we want to minimize impact. I don't know where the rest of the commission stands on that.
I definitely
Agree.
Okay.
Agreed.
We take it out.
And then the other thing is, to the extent that we can, I'd like to see the stockpile area, thoughtfully installed. There's some really large trees near the road there, and if we can avoid them, I'd like to do that.
Correct. I think that's the area that, there are some trees along the edge of the road.
Yeah.
I think when they get marked to have that discussion,
Yep.
there are some trees that are kind of right in the middle of the work area that would need to be removed.
Yep.
A quick inventory of the trees in this area, almost all of them are non-native invasives.
I know.
I think the replanting plan would be native plant species.
Okay.
I assume the work area, the storage area is over there, so it's out of the wetland as opposed to using up the parking lot that's down by the water where all your trucks and stuff are.
Correct. It's having the work and staging area outside of floodplain and buffer zone there too.
Which is kind of, I understand it's sort of a conflict because you've got all of that space that's now being, that's now used for trucks parking and Northeastern trucks and other work, which is right next to where you're going to be digging holes for the pumps. So I guess it's a conflict of the wetland. It's everybody familiar with what I'm talking about. This wide area that's gravel now that's definitely within the wetland buffer area, but a logical place to be storing pipes rather than cutting down trees to do it.
Well, the other item to think about is when you look at the plan C300, the proposed building then kind of pinches off that utility corridor from the that open area that's in the gravel area. So it leaves a single contiguous work area by keeping by having the staging and stockpiling area over by the road, but by Swallow Cave Road.
Does anybody else on the commission have any questions, comments, concerns?
We talked briefly about asking them to plant more trees than they remove. Is that something we can put in the order of conditions? Because younger trees are not the equivalent to established trees.
Yep. I think they'll submit a planting plan to us before work begins, and they'll need that approved before work can begin. So
okay,
we'd have to be, I think it's worth seeing what they're going to take down and, realistically standing there and looking at an area and trying to judge what they should put back is probably not a useful exercise.
Yep.
So I think it's worth having them mark out the trees and seeing it, and then they can submit a planting plan to us, which we'll approve, and then the construction can continue. I mean, if we approve this.
Right. Just one question, Madam Chair, where most of this is outside of the buffer zone.
Yeah.
Does it make sense to put those items kind of in the findings of fact as opposed to special conditions? I'm not sure if special conditions can be applied for work outside of jurisdictional areas, but if they're in findings of fact, then part of the record as to what's to be done.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could do that. I mean, I think by doing work on the site, we get jurisdiction, right? Kind of like stormwater, we get full site's jurisdiction. We could do it either way.
Okay.
But I guess the point is that right now we're under the agreed understanding that that's what would be expected.
Correct. To submit the plan for review and comment.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else from people before we go to the public?
I guess we had an open question at the last meeting, discussing the fact that with the current stormwater system, or I mean pumping station system, that Northeastern was not able to monitor what they were doing with the outflow of the water, so that it filled up the entire wetland, vegetated wetland, and probably killed a big poplar tree. And the hope was that they were going to get an arborist that could describe, maybe suggest some ways to possibly save that tree along with the wetland. And we haven't heard anything back on that. It's been almost 3 months or 4 months since they suddenly discovered that they hadn't been monitoring where the water was going out of the pump system. So is there any more on that? And then it kind of goes to also, I know Rick has talked about having an online monitoring system that anybody in the public can observe, but it's still left open who in Northeastern is going to be looking at that every day, and if something goes wrong, does something about it. That to me hadn't been covered.
The Chris, Madam Chair, if you want, I could respond at least regarding the large poplar cottonwood.
Yep. Go ahead.
There was a Tom Brady, a arborist, came out to evaluate the tree. I think this was he reported back on this by email, and I believe that was forwarded over to you today.
I got a text today from Tim.
Okay. Well, yeah, because we received it just yesterday. Oh, of course. And the wonderful things about computers is now my PDF of that just went blank. But from the arborist, basically, he identified that the tree is experiencing some stress, and there were some recommendations in there that I think the university would be willing to pursue, and that involved cutting back the weedy vegetation about 10 feet around the tree trunk to provide some better aeration and whatnot to the tree roots. Also, fertilizing the tree with mycorrhizal fertilizer, which is an organic fertilizer, and the university is willing to do that to try to help the tree. He did show that although there is some stress, there's also some live. There's also it is also still alive, so it's not like this has been killed. And then the other item that we had talked about would be the one of the issues that occurs primarily with the winter storms, but different times of year, that the cobble blocks up the outfall, and making sure that Northeastern has the ability to just clear that out to make sure that outfall remains free and open flow, so that we don't have backup into that area.
So my understanding was that the new stormwater system and outfall system would eliminate the need for that.
It will eliminate the new system will eliminate the seawater from being discharged into this depression.
Yeah.
As you know, this is the first permit that's needed, so the system will remain in place. Once the new system is installed, that's going to remedy this from having brackish water going in there, except for what might occur during storms, and it will just be stormwater. But in the interim, where this, the existing system will remain in place until it's replaced, the ability to, keep that outfall clear so that it continues to drain properly.
I have no problem with that as long as we're notified when it happens.
Okay. That'd be
And
great.
it's done by hand.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Great. And
I'd
so
also like a
that's-
commitment that Northeastern is going to pursue the recommendations from the arborist.
Yes, the recommendations from Mr. Brady was the cutting back the vegetation around it, which yes, and then fertilizing it, yes. Those were the two recommendations that he had, and then ours was making sure that that outfall can remain maintained so that we don't get back up into it anymore.
Okay, so Northeastern has agreed to those items?
Per our discussion today, yes.
Okay, great. Because Tim had texted me and said he was going to check with them, and I just hadn't heard back.
Okay.
So
Just to clarify, yeah, I haven't heard back from the university, but I mean, these things seem simple enough. If the university, if the commission will allow us to remove this non-native vegetation around the base of the tree and put this fertilizer or supplemental nutrition that Tom had suggested in a resource area, certainly that's something we're willing to pursue.
okay. I'm personally comfortable with it. I'd like to just discuss the parameters of vegetation removal before it happens, so that we're all on the same page. That nobody's
That's
upset.
exactly what we're still trying to work out too. How it happens and when it happens, and the logistics behind it. So that's why you don't have it yet. We're still trying to work out some of those details.
Okay.
And Tim, it might make sense just to coordinate with Tom Brady on getting any more details relative to his recommendations.
Sure. But as Dwight had mentioned, and you'll see this in Tom's email, he was clear that there is still live tissue, and he does feel that the characteristics of that are changing, but we can still take measures to aid that tree.
Okay.
There was no mention of flooding it with some fresh water instead of salt water to try to clear that whole area out of the salt water that's been laid in there.
No.
I mean, especially since we've had a drought for the last 2 months, so pretty much it's probably all still salt water in the soil.
Well, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head, Mark. I mean, every tree in the state's dropping their leaves early right now. So
no, I know that.
We'll take the recommendation of the arborist and
Yeah, with that, Mr. Paytek, I think that was not in his recommendations, but that's certainly something that we can ask the arborist about. And
Yeah, let's ask him and see what he thinks.
yeah, if he thinks additional irrigation with fresh water would assist it. Let's get the recommendation from the expert. It does make common sense, but let's talk to him.
Yeah, it can't hurt to ask him, and maybe it would be beneficial for the wetland system as a whole, not just the tree. And I don't know if there's a fire plug around that, like the fire department could literally come do it. Maybe there's an opportunity for that if he thinks it makes sense.
Guys, I think Northeastern could probably get some funding because it's a climate resiliency project.
Okay, anybody else have any comments? At this time, you'll have another opportunity. I just want to open it up to the public before we.
I'd like to speak. My name is Bill Mahoney. Hello, you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the resources in Lowe's Cove. This piping is going to go further into a valuable lobster resource in the cove, and we're very concerned. The lobster community is very concerned with what might happen. Presently, they have 260 gallons per minute exiting or coming into the labs. This new piping system is going to so-called a minimum of 600. That's questionable whether it will remain 600, but we're very concerned, and again, we go back to the certificate of Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs and back in June 2020. Northeastern committed, I quote, as mitigation to offset potential loss of 5 mature lobsters per year attributable to the new seawater system. Northeastern proposes to construct an on-site lobster hatchery to produce approximately 90,000 stage 4 larval lobsters per year. Coordination with DMF and any local fishermen. The larvae will be released at you call it Bathing Beach, Lowe's Cove, or in nearby Nahant waters as recommended by lobstermen. This effort should result in at least 45 legal lobsters per year. The proposal by Northeastern to construct a lobster hatchery should be accepted by the Conservation Commission and included in the order of conditions if you pass an order of conditions tonight. The hatchery should be completed before any construction begins on the new seawater system. Otherwise, we're concerned about Northeastern following. So we're very concerned, the lobster community, very concerned with these larger pipes entering into the valuable lobster fishery right off the coast. And we'd like to see Northeastern commit themselves. They've been here for 50 years. And, you know, we hear all about University of Maine, University of New Hampshire doing great things with the lobstermen in their community. And we haven't seen much happen at Northeastern. So we want a commitment from Northeastern to do something, i.e. a hatchery. Thank you.
Okay. Let me speak on the regulatory side and a little bit on the technical, but Rick could get into more of the technical after I finish. But first of all, the existing system, you know, currently does pull water into the system with a certain velocity. I don't have that section of the notice of intent up, but it pulls it in at a certain velocity, which would entrain and pull in lobster larvae. The new system that's being proposed is designed to have a lower intake velocity, will have less entrainment and entrapment of larvae and other matter. The DMF has reviewed this project in comment and didn't have any issues with the proposed project. So it's in terms of the interest of the Wetlands Protection Act as designed, the project protects those interests, certainly relative to the existing system that's in place.
I disagree with
the certificate on the MEPA documents, the EIR was for the entire project that was reviewed by the EIR by MEPA, and now we're seeking permission for the seawater replacement project.
Well, that's what they were talking about. It's quoted from what Northeastern said. The seawater system is what they're talking about when they suggested mitigation in the form of a hatchery.
And the project is designed meets the interest of the Wetlands Protection Act. I think Rick could talk a little bit more about the actual intake design, of that relative to the existing.
Yeah, I mean, we've all chatted about this during the public hearings, and I've tried to explain it as best as I could. It's a great question, and I know, Bill, it's a huge concern of yours. But what Dwight is saying is relatively true. The current intake, I think it was permitted for 500 gallons a minute. They do have problems with mussels that impedes the flow, so it can be reduced when the pipe becomes inundated with mussels down to the 200 gallon a minute flow rate, but it has the capacity or ability when both pumps are running to pump at 500 gallons a minute. But the intake was not properly designed. It does have a very large or very high capture velocity in the new system. has a capture velocity about 10 times less than the mass DEP requirement. So I think in terms of capturing larval lobster, that's not going to happen like it could happen with the existing system. So we're out looking for your best interest there. There is not as much pipe exposed above the seabed like there is in the current system. Most of it's buried underground. It does terminate above the seafloor, of course, where the intakes are. So it doesn't disrupt the substrate habitat that the lobsters flourish in that particular cove. So I think that's an improvement. We do have a dashboard and we are monitoring the flow rates and the temperatures returning back to the ocean. So we're trying to provide you with the concrete data that you're asking for in proof that we are being good citizens of this permit application and not exceeding the flow rates that were granted to draw from the cove.
So I can call in, on my computer and find out every day what the draw rate is.
Yeah, Bill, it'd be like I've seen on a Nahant online display the daily seawater temperature at one of your beaches. I'm not sure where it's taken, but you can go online and look and see if you want to go swimming or not, or if the water's too cold. We'll have something similar that will display the flow rate, the incoming seawater temperature, and the outgoing seawater temperature. So it will all be there for everyone to see, so that nothing feels deceptive or hidden.
But you guys have offered as mitigation back in June 19th, 2020 to do a lobster hatchery, and I want that to happen. And I think the Conservation Commission should have that as in the order of conditions. Simple as that. You guys are the guys who came up with this idea, not the lobstermen. You guys offered it.
Yeah.
Northeastern hasn't offered a whole lot to lobstermen over the 50 years. All they've done is accept us when we bring blue lobsters and oversized lobsters and people, and so they can have a little aquarium over the years. That's it. Haven't done much.
So is your stance still that the lobster hatchery doesn't go forward unless the building goes forward?
Well, we talked about that earlier today. Oh, Dave, go ahead.
Hi, Kristen. I can jump in. David with Colston, helping with the permitting effort. And Northeastern still would love to do the lobster hatchery. So it's not a question of whether there's alignment there or not. This particular project is a smaller scope. It's really it's a replacement.
Let's let him talk and then we'll address things.
It's a replacement of what's there now. Really it's a seawater infrastructure replacement project, and replacing it in a way that reduces the intake as was described already. So it's just a narrower scope as to what's covered in this NOI. And the lobster hatchery is separate.
Sounds like a no. I mean, what are you going to do with the old dive locker space that's now going to be empty because you have this huge pump house? Could that be home to a lobster hatchery?
Kristen, Rick here. So my guesstimate of how big a lobster hatchery would have to be to produce 90,000 stage 4 lobster larvae is probably in the neighborhood of 1,000 to 1,200 square feet. It's going to need mechanical space. It's going to need food growing space, and it's going to need lobster larva growing space. So it's not anything small. So 1,000 square feet is 50 by 20.
Mm-hmm.
So we're already to put the pump house in, we already got pushed off the wetland jurisdiction area.
Yep.
So where would this go? where on site would it go? And that's the challenge. We can design it. I can design something like this and would love to do a project like this, but the problem is there's no available land to do that.
How about where the people change for their scuba gear, right out the rear end of the building? That's presently there.
No, outdoors. It's not an
No,
outdoor.
right inside that door, people there's scuba gear in there, etc. In the old building.
I mean, I guess the problem is you're getting, if we approve this, you're getting the increased flow you want, you're getting the big pump house and the storage and this and that. And it feels a little bit like we're being held hostage. Like you're not going to get what you want unless we get this building. And that's kind of an unfortunate situation, And I mean, I understand what you're saying. I guess it just feels a little bit like we're being held hostage on this. Like you're getting the main thing that you need to continue your science, but you're not able to accommodate this other promise that was made.
Kristen, I can speak to that a little bit more, and certainly, as David mentioned, we've made these types of we've offered these types of services to the town through a number of community benefits packages that so far have been rejected by the selectmen, but we're still working with them, and we still hope one day to have a lobster hatchery out there. What the difference between what was in the EIR and what's in this particular NOI, as David mentioned, it's a much narrower scope. And you so eloquently said it yourself. This is just infrastructure for the existing research, and we're not asking for an increase in our capacity. Our current capacity is 600 gallons per minute. We're only asking to match that. And as Rick and as Dwight have mentioned, this current system, by using the DEP's own terms, is a betterment to what exists. And the marine fisheries agree with that. They've not commented on any negative impact that this system has. So just to put a fine point on this, this is something that the university is going to continue to pursue. Whether or not, can I please finish? Thank you. This is just not something we can accommodate as part of this project. This is a much, much smaller scope. And people keep talking about the existing dive locker space. It's just, there's not an existing dive locker space. It's a closet and a effectively a portable coat hanger where people hang their wetsuits. The space just does not physically exist. In addition to the physical space that Rick had mentioned too, there's also additional maintenance staff and research staff that need to be onboarded as part of that. And again, there's not space for that. We already have temporary trailers that we've been trying for years to remove and provide these people with a home. There's just, this physical space just isn't there as part of this project.
The lobster fishery is the biggest fishery in the town. And as Rick said, the system you've used since 2000 and way back when, 10, hasn't been successful. It's sucked in a lot of lobster larvae over the years. So we're looking for mitigation right now from Northeastern. And this should be the time to do it. And the Conservation Commission should have this as upfront, that they should have it, a lobster hatchery before you okay anything.
But it's your opinion, Bill. The fishery does have a state agency to protect their interests, the Department of Marine Fisheries. They've reviewed this and they've provided no comment. They see no negative impact as a result of the system.
Michelle, would you like, you have your hand raised?
Thanks, Kristen. Michelle Capano, 29 Ocean Street. Just a couple comments and hopefully things that the commission will consider. So thanks for all the time and effort you've been putting through this hearing. And certainly Northeastern has put a lot of time as well. I think one of the things as a citizen, since this is a large project in the community, is to have the commission request Northeastern to provide monthly progress updates on their work for this project. One of the issues I have is scope. And while you'll put forward your decision and your order of conditions, I think from a citizen's perspective, I'd like to make sure that, we're seeing that the project is on track. And certainly having them share their project schedule and having that monthly update to the commission on where they are and making sure the scope is being monitored, I think would probably help, bridge some of the challenges we're experiencing for a project of this size.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like me to speak to that as well, Kristen?
Sure, Tim.
Let's just see if there's anything else Michelle wants to. Was there anything else, Michelle?
No, not right now. Something else may come up, but if we can start there, I think that's a good path forward.
Yep, go ahead, Tim.
So in terms of monitoring the scope, clearly there's a process for that in your bylaw through the notice of project change. So of course, anytime we come up against the parameters of the notice of project change, we will consult you. The monthly progress report, it seems like something easy enough that we can keep you updated, especially when we're doing work in that area. I think that's something that you would expect from us, that we communicate the work that we're doing and when we're doing it with you.
I agree. I think that's a fair, because then we kind of have an idea of, we're going to start directional drilling this date. We're going to, you could just kind of lay it out for us and then we're all aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's not, you'll have that scheduled so you'll know where you're at on that stuff anyway.
And just one thing relative to space, we have been working to keep all the alterations below the 5,000 square feet. And, finding space is part of this project that still respects that threshold is a challenge. So I think the university is not adverse to doing the lobster hatchery, but making it part of this project in the space and meeting the upset limits that were identified as part of the denial for the first seawater project. You just had to get into some logistics here. So, that's why we're seeking the order of conditions for the project as laid out here. And the university is still, has identified to do a lobster hatchery.
Okay, thank you, Dwight. Susan?
Yeah, hi, I'm Susan Solomon, 5 Wendell Road. I'm pleased to hear that there's a plan to make the outflow temperatures publicly available. I guess my request would be that the measurement system that I believe is already in place and has been making such measurements for a long time, that those data be made publicly available and that the system's results be publicly available now, basically. So, that we be able to see what the outflow temperature is on the current system at this time. And as new modifications are done, that we actually be able to see in real time what those temperatures are. The other thing that has been talked about is surveys of the lobster population that have gone back, and the statement's been made that there's no change in the lobster population in the cove. But, again, in the interest of transparency, it would really be appropriate for those data to be made publicly available. And I've asked actually repeatedly for this, and nothing's happened. So I would hope that, we can have something more than just, a promise that temperature data will be available, that we actually get it now and that it be part of the conditions and it be done continuously.
Rick, does the existing system have that capacity?
I don't think it exists. I think what they did is they took a bunch of hobo loggers and, data logged some temperatures for a couple months. But I think one of the problems with the existing outfall system, it's a combination stormwater and seawater.
Right.
So what are you really getting? I don't know if that wetland runs off, even if there's no rainwater. I don't know enough about it, but
I can speak to that a little bit, Rick.
Sure.
So we did do a 10-month study back before we submitted our ENF even to study the effects and parameter, I guess, characteristics of our existing seawater. And it wasn't just temperature, it was total suspended solids, it was dissolved oxygen, it was pH levels, it was a number of characteristics. That information was included in our ENF and our EIR. But Rick stated, you know, the hobo sensors, as Rick mentioned, they're basically little temperature loggers that we physically had to send divers out to the end of the pipes to be able to install them and to gather the data. We put them all over our campus. So we put them on our intakes and our outfalls. So it wasn't only where it commingled, it was when it came off the experiments as well. And again, all that information is in our EIR and ENF. And then back to Ms. Solomon's point about the surveys, we've conducted 2 benthic surveys, one that was part of our ENF and EIR back in, I believe it was 2017, 2018, and another that was conducted as part of our fact-finding peer review, process in 2021, 2020, the years are blending together. I think it was 2021, I'm sorry, when we went through the Ecotech peer review. And both of those have been made public through our various filings with this commission.
You know, the data, as far as I can tell from having read the filings quite carefully, has actually not been made public. You've shown graphs of what you think the bottom line information is, but you haven't, as far as I know, made the data itself publicly available, which is, you know, as you know, very simple procedure in the modern world. You know, you can easily put that on a website and make it available. So I really think that the town deserves to see all of that data, and so that we can have a comparison. You know, when you turn on the new system, what kind of measurement system are you going to use for the new system, and why is it going to be more available, whereas this previous system was somehow a very complex thing? I mean, I guess I don't really understand why it's that hard to measure seawater temperatures.
Well, speaking to the data in the benthic survey, that was reviewed by not only our engineers, but the town engineers as well. And their comments on that are public. They're part of the.
Why can't we see the data? Why can't we actually have the raw data, the data that other people supposedly have looked at? Why is that?
Susan,
not
literally everything we have has
available?
been submitted to the board. I mean, there's nothing else that we could give you.
I don't
And it's been
understand
reviewed
what
by
you're saying.
Ecotech.
I mean, I've asked about this data many times. I don't understand why it wouldn't be available to the public. Why are you keeping it secret? I mean, the
There's
world
nothing
of
that we have
science
that's
is
secret.
that.
Everything that we have has been
Good.
submitted
I'm
as
really
part of our
glad to
findings.
hear that. I mean, but the nature of the world of science is that when you want to prove something to other people, you make that data available. So I don't really understand why it's not available. And I would actually, again, like to understand how the new system is going to alleviate the complexities that you just talked about of, the divers and this and that, when is that going to come to pass, and why can't we get what you're doing now in the same way? You're going to have to buy those systems anyway to measure it for the new system. Why can't you buy them now and measure your existing system and make it
They're
immediately
running
publicly
cables.
available?
The sensors are running cables, and the cables are installed in conduits, and the conduits have to be trenched into those sensitive areas that we've been talking about. So the one Tim was talking about is a little portable gizmo, battery operated, that you throw in, you mount it wherever you want to sense the water temperature. And then you have to retrieve the data, download it into a laptop, and then upload it onto whatever format you want to. This other one is real-time sensors that are running, like I said, in cables that will go to the computer system that runs the seawater system. So it's a much different method of extracting and transporting and publishing data.
Yeah, I think that the short answer is the existing system does not have sensors built into it. So it needs to be, these sensors go out, temporary sensors installed and then retrieved. The new system will have sensors built into the system, correct, Rick? And that's what allows the real-time data and data to be on a dashboard. So it's, you know, a Model T system out there now with no systems, and a 2022 with all onboard computers telling you what your car is doing. So I think that's the difference between the existing and the proposed.
Isn't there something in between? I mean, couldn't you have something that's kind of the equivalent of an Argo float that is right at your outflow and does the same thing that an Argo float does, you know, goes up to the top, transmits the
Susan,
data, you get it immediately.
The outfall is right at the seawall. It doesn't, it spills onto the cobbles and then dribbles into the beach, into the water. It's not the same as what you're, I think, I don't know if you're familiar with it by walking down there, but it's
Well, part of the
totally
problem
different.
too is it combines with stormwater, so it
Correct.
wouldn't be
Yeah.
a true representation of what was going on.
Right.
Which is the problem with the system currently. It's an antiquated system. It's a combined sewer system, essentially, kind of.
Yeah.
And so it's not, that's why that wetland is stressed. That's why it's not a true representation of what the outfall water is.
Well, that sort of makes the claim that the existing outflow hasn't hurt the lobsters somewhat
No, it
questionable
has.
then, doesn't it?
No,
Because,
the comment
True.
was about the intake, not the intake of the lobsters existing and proposed, with the proposed intake
No,
having a lower.
I understand that part. That's a
Okay.
different question. I'm asking you about the outflow of the existing system and why we have never seen any of the data that supposedly supports the view that it has not hurt the lobsters. Now you're telling me actually it probably has hurt the lobsters. You've asserted numerous times that it is
Kristen,
not.
can I share my screen? Can I
Yeah.
shoot?
Yep, go ahead.
All right. That show. That's the existing outfall system. when
Yeah,
it's covered
I
with
walk there a
cobbles.
lot. I've seen it many times.
Yeah, so I don't know how you take that measurement that you're looking for. And, you know, common sense suggests that it's very diffused. I mean, if this has a temperature, let's say +1, +2 greater than the receiving body of your water, by the time it impacts that interface with the water, it basically diffuses roughly into the same temperature within a matter of feet. You know, that's I don't know what that flow rate is, but let's say it's a few hundred gallons a minute.
Don't catch them.
The ocean is millions and millions and millions of gallons. It has absolutely no impact on the temperature of the cove. It's just mathematics. You know, right at the interface where that water first hits the water, yes, there's probably some impact, but a few feet away from that impact, the difference is negligible.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that argument many times and it may be true, but then I'm kind of mystified by how incredibly dead that cove seems to be. And my concern is whether I can really be assured that what you're going to do next is not going to be similarly a cove killer.
Yeah, sorry. I could show you very interesting underwater pictures of that cove area. It's very dynamic. It's full of life. It's full of macroalgae. It's, I'm sure, full of finfish, crustaceans. Whether it's has harvestable size lobsters, I really don't know. I didn't dive on it, but it probably has many, many juvenile lobsters, and it's a matter of a lobsterman, you know, catching one or two. You know, I don't know what the odds are from larvae to adults. I think it's, I don't know if it's
7
1 in a
years.
million or 10 million to 1 that are 1 in 10 million that survive to adult stage. So yeah, if you're born a lobster, you don't have a very good chance of ever making it to an adult.
There's a lot of buried lobsters right there at Shag Rock where you're gonna move that pipe to. Lots of, they come in there every year.
Yeah, and
they drop their lobster larvae. Yeah.
Yeah, and
You know, a simple, I'm Marilyn Mahoney, 179 Willow. you know, a thing that has been recommended for months, if not years, is that Northeastern speak to the lobstermen who could inform the university that that cove, they do not catch lobsters there. They have to go further out to catch lobsters. So it is, I mean, they know, the largest industry in this community knows that there has been a negative impact on the lobster population in that cove. And it amazes me. I mean, Jeff Trussell did publicly admit that millions of lobster larvae over these years have probably been killed. So here we are, we're into our third year of trying to talk to this university who refuses to talk to the people that are out there laboring day in and day out with the lobster industry. It is beyond comprehension that you're talking about all the sophisticated systems of, you know, measuring the temperatures. How about talking to the people that are there every single day trying to catch the lobsters that aren't in there anymore because of what's happening with the outflow? Hello, is this a university or not? Are there smart people there? I would think scientists would be smart enough to figure out that you talk to the people that are out there. It's rude to ignore our largest industry in this community. We're still waiting.
Susan, did you have anything else you wanted to?
Yeah, I guess I still am mystified by the lack of willingness to make the data that supposedly supports their case publicly available. It's fine that it's been submitted. That's great. It's been reviewed. I just don't understand the lack of transparency. And it seems to me that if data exists that have to do with the support of this proposal, that the public should be able to see it. So that has never been released. I've asked for it numerous times. I'd like to see all the temperature data. And I'd like to see all the lobster survey data.
Tim, does this raw data exist in some format?
Yeah, I'm just not sure how else I could say it. They're absolutely available in public documents.
Is there any way you can look that up and?
Yeah, the commission has it all. Yeah.
I don't have a copy of the EIR at home. It's the EIR.
It's not in the EIR. I have read the EIR very carefully. There's summaries of what it supposedly says in there. I would just like to, I don't understand the reluctance to make data to support your case publicly available.
Tim, this is Tom Costin, 369 Nahant Road. Just following up on Susan's comments, it would seem to me that the university would want to go out of their way to try to make sure that this information is available to the public, rather than just saying it is available to the commission. And it would be a simple thing for you to email that to all of us to make it public on the Nahant.org website. You know, it's interesting because we have worked with Nahant for over 50 years. And what has happened here is we've lost the trust of Northeastern. And that's the important thing here. And it would seem to me, if you want to be good citizens, that you would do everything you possibly could to work with the people, the citizens here of Nahant. And that has not been the case over the last few years. And coming back to this cottonwood tree, which Mark Patek has mentioned earlier, I was completely outraged when I first heard about this and what had happened. I don't understand why Northeastern, as good citizens, as people who care about the environment, didn't take remedial actions immediately. And if you don't have the resources within the university, why you didn't contact some outsourced company like Clean Harbors to come in, because like Mark Patek had said, I would think that you would have immediately rinsed it with fresh water, and that would have helped out tremendously. But then during this drought and this heat wave, it only exacerbated the situation. And someone else here mentioned that about the betterment, that's what you're looking for. And all we know is that the citizens of Roxbury and the citizens of Burlington were promised similar situations where they would see betterment in their community, and they didn't. So I just come back to what Susan is saying. If you have this information, rather than just saying, well, it's available to the commission, just get it out to all of us.
So Tom, I'm on nahant.org/any expansion right now, and the notice of intent documents are all on there. The Conservation Commission peer review is all on there. Our presentations are all up on there. And then regarding the tree, I mean, as soon as Kristen brought it to our attention, she recommended an arborist, and we called him immediately. And he provided his findings, and we intend to do what we can to bring those findings home and do what he suggests. So,
but why did Kristen have to call you? People are up there on a day-to-day basis. You know when the situation occurred, when you had the malfunction. Why wasn't something done?
It wasn't a malfunction. There was no malfunction, Tom. Just a point of clarity. There was no malfunction.
There was a backflow of some sort.
Is there an on-site property manager?
We have a lab manager, but I mean, he's more concerned with the research. There isn't a property manager per se.
I mean, I guess this is what concerns me a little bit, is that there's nobody taking a look at what's going on. You know, like there's a refrigerator that's been sitting in the trash area for a long time. And, you know, I don't know what chemicals are in those, but like, it's a lot of stuff that it's like, if somebody was just paying attention, we could have nipped a lot of the stuff in the bud. And so I worry, like, as you install this new system and is the intent at some point to have somebody that's kind of a property facilities manager that's keeping an eye on things, a closer eye on things? Or is that not on the books until if you get a CSI building? Realistically.
I mean, I think the simple answer is that what Tom had recommended would require approval from this board, removal of vegetation from a protected area, the supplemental nutrition in a protected area. So again, we're acting as quickly as we can to stay within the bounds of the law.
I get that. I guess I just, you know, I don't personally, I don't walk out there, but I got a lot of emails before I contacted you, and then it was like, oh, well, this is backed up. You're right. We should do this. Like, I think that there's a need to be more on top of what's going on the property so that it's not the public bringing this to your attention as an issue, and you're being more proactive. You know what I mean?
Well, I think exactly what we said tonight, that you know, Northeastern will, as soon as we recognize that it's starting to back up, we'll just go out there and do it. We'll let you know when we're going to do it, but you've given us permission tonight to just go out there and clear it by hand, Mark. We've always cleared it by hand.
Yep.
Whenever we notice the problem occurring. So I think we've solved that problem tonight.
The problem is you don't notice it. The trash, bathing beach.
That's not true. That's not true, Mark. That's not true. The problem is there's been so many hurdles to do this work that I think we've
one phone call to Kristen to say, could we clear the stuff is backing up? One phone call and you would have had permission to do it. Nobody noticed it. Nobody noticed the tree was dying. Nobody noticed the whole wetland was dying until the citizens of Nahant who walk it complained about it. There's a big fish kill. It may have been totally natural, but there's nobody in Northeastern that you could call and say, did you guys do something that caused the fish kill, or is this a natural thing that happened? The security guy can't do anything about it. There's nobody there that can do it. We're going to have a great dashboard that the public can monitor what's going on. Who in Northeastern is going to monitor it and say, gee, the temperatures just got far apart. We need to do something. There's nobody assigned to that.
I guess
that's our problem. Why should the Nahanters be monitoring the stuff? I mean, nobody in Northeastern that I've ever seen out cleaning a beach. I've seen the kids in the classes. They go out, they do all the research over the years. They all walk in, they walk over the trash. The beaches get cleaned because the Nahanters go out and clean the beach. It just doesn't make sense to any of us.
I guess the question is, moving forward, what is your intention as far as being, you know, that we can all agree that's a special property. what are we going to do to make sure that what's happened in the past doesn't happen anymore? Obviously, all of it's out on the table now. You're under a microscope. What's the plan moving forward? We can rehash what's happened. I don't think that's productive.
Right. You know, where we talked earlier, you know, in terms of the outfall, I think, Tim, we could have the university monitor that outfall on a regular basis, not just after storms, but on a regular basis. I think historically, it's usually the winter storms that cause the biggest issue, but and then clear it out as needed. So whether that's weekly, every other week, you know, every other week, and then after storm, something like that, going forward to deal with that outfall issue.
Diane, want to Diane, please,
forward,
just a minute.
And going forward, that then becomes that's not an issue because we wouldn't have the seawater, but it would probably still make sense to continue to monitor that outfall so that the wetland itself doesn't overflow. It is a basin and it serves as a essentially kind of as a detention basin, but even detention basins need to drain. But in terms of salt water going into it, that will no longer be part of the future condition if this seawater system is installed.
I just think it's important for the university to be stewards of the property and not just focused on what they're doing as far as the research. Obviously, you're there to do research, but you know, it's important to be a steward of the property as well. And that's keeping an eye, you know, having somebody that keeps an eye on what's going on outside. And I think that's something that you guys need to think about how you're going to solve that.
Yeah.
Because you keep getting in trouble over stuff that if somebody was just keeping an eye once a week, walking around, seeing what's going on, you know, a lot of the stuff could be avoided.
I mean, you see the same thing in the plans when you go through the thing, you know, a lot of this stuff in here, we're going to tell our construction people to do this. We're going to tell them not to idle their trucks. Nobody in Northeastern is saying, I'm going to go out and make sure they're not idling their trucks and do something about it. It's a bunch of, you know, we've got how many consultants for Northeastern that are in this meeting, and I see one rep, maybe there's more than one, but I only see one employee of Northeastern attending this whole session. But it's just we go through all the conditions in here in the plans and the construction instructions and things like that. Again, it's really not Northeastern taking responsibility. It's we're delegating it to a construction engineer, a consultant, or whatever, but not that we are going to make sure that nobody's idling trucks unnecessarily. We Northeastern are going to make sure the beaches are kept clean. We Northeastern are going to make sure the outflow temperatures line up. It's just a missing, as Kristen said, it's somebody should be responsible for the whole property thing.
Alice Court, you've been very patient.
Yes, hi. Well, you know, I wanted to weigh in on a couple of different things. Tom Costin also went back to this tree, and I was distressed to hear that when people were talking about the tree is stressed and maybe the tree needs to have the plants removed around it and get a little bit of food. But Mr. McKay had problems with the concept, it would seem, of watering, giving the tree fresh water, and kind of said flippantly about how it's a drought and all trees are stressed. Yeah, but you know, most homeowners look around, they understand they're not supposed to have their automatic sprinkler systems on, but right now, in the stage of drought that we have, we're allowed to hose water our bushes and our trees if they're looking ill, to save the trees because they're an incredible resource for Nahant. So I was dismayed to hear your seeming objection. Well, Tom Brady didn't tell us to water our plants and our trees that are looking sick and stressed and essentially dying. I mean, that wasn't what was spoken by you, but clearly you know, what is meant is this tree is dying and it's on its last legs, and maybe you can do a few things. And I would think you would want to do all the things and as quickly as possible. And that includes giving it fresh water to try to rescue it. And if that means, you know, if we have to ask Kristen or the Conservation Commission, you know, are we allowed to water our plants? Then we should ask them as quickly as possible, or you should ask them as quickly as possible. And the concern is that when you rip up this area out to the street for your utilities, and then you nicely put in plants, if nobody pays attention to those plants, they're not going to live. And those trees that you plant are not going to survive and do well because you're not watering them, you're not taking care of them. You've tossed back at the citizens of Nahant about how, you know, there are not lots of invasives all over the East Point. Well, the invasives, you know, were there partly because you didn't take care of the property. You had a graduate student who did a study on invasives versus non-invasives in a little fenced-in area in the valley. And that fence was still around those invasives after that, you know, you published his thesis, and it sat there on your website for a prolonged period of time. But then what happened to the invasives that he was studying? Did Northeastern do anything to, you know, remediate that area? Not that I'm aware. And that's, you know, now it's like, oh my gosh, you know, none of this growth is worth anything because it's all non-invasive. I mean, it's all invasive. So I would say, let's try to fix this, you know, help this tree as quickly as possible, because it's a beautiful tree and it shouldn't be, you know, left to its own devices in a drought when it's already been damaged by these other issues that Northeastern caused. With regards to your reaction about the, you know, why the lobster fishery or hatchery shouldn't be included because it was part of the big NOI. Well, you decided to split the NOIs, you know, after you went to the state commission. And yet you did tie the hatchery in with the changing of the pipes. Mr. McKay, you just, you know, also sort of summed up, well, this is just a small thing and we're just essentially duplicating the system that we had. But at the same time, you're saying, first of all, we know these two pipes you're putting in are massively bigger than the pipes that you've had. And that's all, we've been told that it's because of biofouling and you need to have this, but you're acknowledging that you're increasing the flow, even though it may be, you know, somewhat more protected flow, it's still going to be a massive increase because you're going up to 600 per minute instead of what you're saying now. Oh, a lot of times it's only been 150 or it's only been 200. So to me, I don't really get why you feel like you're entitled to blow off the lobster hatchery, because that was tied in to the inflow and the outflow of into the cove and not into all of the other, you know, research development that you want. You're upset because you've had a lot of researchers in the temporary trailers. But to me, what I hear is, yeah, you have overbuilt your research at this site and this site cannot accommodate you. So maybe you need to go look elsewhere for your, you know, for some of those researchers. You put the hatchery in and make room elsewhere for some of the other research that can be done elsewhere. So I clearly feel like your program has gotten too big for the Nahant site. But if you want to put in these big pipes and, you know, increase the flow and do damage to the lobster production in the cove that's been ongoing for a long time, you need to figure out a way to replenish and heal the damage that's been done to the lobster fishery. Thanks.
Thank you, Alice. Diane?
Hello, Diane Monteith, 20 Seabreeze Lane. Thank you. We say that we want to be cooperative. Both parties want to be cooperative. And the way to do that is to take actions to make that happen. Number one is communication. So the fact that we hear everybody saying we need a single point of contact with Northeastern, maybe we need more than one for the facility, one for the project, one for everyday things. Please open up to that request. It can only help you. It can only help our town. It's essential. My job as an account executive was to act as a single point of contact for an electric utility, and the largest customers, most important, sensitive customers, as we are to you, had a single point of contact who would handle anything and run with it. So I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'm begging you to please come back to us with that. It wouldn't be on this particular, project. On as far as the, how long is the project expected to take, the seawater upgrade project? Months, years?
Tim, I believe it's probably a several month construction.
Right, and
Tim?
we're far away from commencing construction.
Yep.
We still have civil permits that we need to move through. So until we have a clear picture of that, and keep in mind too, there's really two components. There's your landside component, your seaside component. Your the drilling should take. I've asked for estimates, but obviously it's variable depending on conditions. Somewhere between a few weeks and a month and a half is what I'm getting. Obviously, again, that's one small component. You have your landside component. That's a lot easier to do. 6 months would be the estimate for the building itself, and then of course there's the removal of the pump house, which now again, the directive we gave our designers at the very beginning of this particular NOI is to limit environmental impact to the greatest extent possible, and that included taking out the demo of the pump house. But that's something we want to include. So there's that phase of it as well. Your commissioning and closeout, and your replanting. So I would say all in all, a year.
Okay.
Best guess estimate. Don't hold me to that, but that's
No.
just what I'm
And
getting
with
from our
that,
consultant.
sure. And with that, numbers of employees coming on through the town, your parking plan, I want to protect the wetlands and sensitive areas. Equipment, where will it be parked? You use opportunistic parking, which means you park wherever you want, on grass and so forth. Do you have a plan? If you don't, I think we should have a plan on where you will park and where the equipment will be stored. I know about the store pile that you said in the gravel area, which is a buffer zone, I believe, but is that a requirement? Will that be a requirement to share a parking plan?
Absolutely. We've actually already worked up a logistics plan, and that's part of our ENF and EIR filings. We are proposing to use satellite lots, so not everybody in town, not all of the workers will be commuting to that location. The stockpile that you mentioned related to this specific project is outside of the buffer zone for that specific reason. We're trying to limit impact to the greatest extent possible.
Yep. And then again, sensitivity to the neighborhood. You had a wonderful event, well attended the other day, and there were 2 buses that were idling along the roadside for over an hour at least. And that was pretty inconsiderate. It also goes against our anti-idling policy in town. So they could have easily pulled into the lot and been on your property. So, but again, if we had a phone number, we could just drop a dime and say, can you move the buses, please? Okay, because there's so many things happening in your world that you got to really pull it together. And try to give us some sort of control over our community that you're a part of. And let's see, I think that'll be it for now. Okay.
So if anybody else wants to comment, I just want to remind you, these are all important topics, but they're not all conservation topics, unfortunately. And they matter to all of us, but this is not the venue for them. This is wetlands related issues exclusively. So if
Yeah.
anybody else has any wetland specific questions or
Can I just
comments,
say, maybe Northeastern should have another public forum and let us all air it out. It's all pent up. The only time we get to speak is during these midnight, forays. How
well,
about it?
I think
Yeah.
that's definitely something they should think about doing. But we got to focus here because it's
Sorry.
getting late. Anybody else wetlands related issues, questions, concerns?
Yes, I'd just like to comment that, as we know, in the construction phase that was done recently, well, not that recently now, but on the attempt to do the CSI, they had a big problem of actually driving a vehicle right into the wetlands.
Yeah.
And I guess it seems to me that we should remember that and think about whether a project that's now being proposed needs a greater degree of supervision on a daily basis. It's related to what was talked about earlier with respect to the tree and the other issues that go on. But, it just seems to me that an unsupervised project, if it were to go forward in that same way, would be fraught with the potential to produce the same kind of issues.
Right. Okay. Anybody else? Last call. Okay. Anybody on the commission have any thoughts? Rick, does the proposed monitoring system, I guess we'll call it, require any regular calibration?
For like temperature?
Yeah.
Well, I guess we would need a standard, right? Usually somebody designates a mercury thermometer as the standard, right? You stick it in ice water, you zero it out, right? You can stick it in boiling water, you shoot it over to 212, and then you compare that with the electronic sensor. And that's like if you were operating a process treatment plant or a wastewater treatment plant, you calibrate your pH sensor monthly or weekly, whatever the requirement is. So yeah, that could be part of the order conditions, I guess, to ensure that that's done. And we could document it when it's done on the dashboard.
I think that might be worth, I mean, I don't know what the frequency, appropriate frequency, if it's biannual, like annually or a couple times a year, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think once a year is probably adequate, but if the board feels like it should be done twice a year, it's not a big deal to do it, so.
Okay. Okay. All right, anybody else? Anybody on the commission have any thoughts?
Just to reiterate, sorry, Mark, just to reiterate Rick's point, we're completely committed to sharing all of our monitoring data, and we have no problem with construction oversight. I think those are all pretty normal things to ask for.
So I don't think we included an environmental monitor on the previous permit. So do you intend to have, so you'll have a foreman, right? A contractor. Will the university also have somebody that'll be on site all the time monitoring work?
We haven't worked out our staffing yet. Obviously, we're still probably a year away at least from commencement of construction. But I mean, as is typical, the order of conditions will be included in the construction specifications.
Yeah.
And the contractor will be bound to that contractually.
Yeah. Okay.
But who's monitoring the contractor?
Well, they usually use like a clerk of works, like,
right.
That oversees the best interest actually of Northeastern to ensure that the contractor is following the specifications and the construction documents, right? That's standard construction.
Yeah, that's
process.
kind of what I was concerned about, is I just want to make sure there's somebody watching
This
the
is
contractor, either
gonna be a-
northeastern internal or an environmental monitor as needed. Something.
What is the interest of environmental that you want to monitor, Kristen? Is it like erosion? Is it like, because this is construction,
I
right?
think I'm more concerned about like the directional drilling breakout type stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that, I guess that portion. I mean, the building itself, whatever, erosion controls, I don't think that's a big deal. I think it's more the directional drilling stuff.
Kristen, I think the recommendation for the previous project from Ecotech
Yeah.
was to have the drilling contractor develop what's typically called an inadvertent release plan,
Yep.
AKA a frack out plan. And that identifies the operations and monitoring that they always do anyways in terms of the drilling, the pressures and whatnot that would indicate whether or not there was an inadvertent release, and then the measures that are employed to address an inadvertent release. That's a standard operating procedure for drillers to do to prepare an IR plan.
Okay. I do, yeah. Okay.
Christian?
Yep.
Christian, again, the secretary, the MIPA secretary, back in 2020, was really concerned about the mitigation factor. And I really think the Conservation Commission has a chance to hold Northeastern accountable for, as they have acknowledged, the destruction of lobster larvae over the years. And this is the chance for the Conservation Commission to hold Northeastern accountable through mitigation and a lobster hatchery. So I hope you guys add that into your order of conditions. I really do.
I have to be honest, I'm torn on that because I mean, this is critical to the science they're doing now. It's not an expansion of the science they're doing now. It's pumping at the capacity they actually have now rather than a diminished capacity. I don't want to punish science. I mean, the expansion I'm not a fan of. The science is critical. So I'm torn on whether it's appropriate to pin that to this.
Well, they have acknowledged it, and a scientist is a person who acknowledged that a year ago.
Okay, so I guess we're at the point for the commission. Does everyone, I mean, are there outstanding issues that people want to see addressed? Have we beat this to death? You know, our premise for denial previously was we wanted the building out of conservation jurisdiction, and they did that. So.
Not the resource, not the ocean, not the land under the water.
Well, that's, I mean, essential. That's not an option to remove it from that. But they also have a couple sets of pipes out there and things hanging out that were mistakenly not removed previously, and they will be.
Yeah, they told us that 5 years ago. They told us that 10 years ago, and they haven't done it.
Well, 5 years ago, I told them to wait. 3 years ago, whatever it was, we were doing this. You know, they're separating the stormwater from the outfall, which I think is important. It's causing issues now. It's hurting resource areas. I don't know. I'm ready to vote with some conditions. I don't know how everybody else feels. I mean, is there any reason we need to have another meeting, or are we ready to vote tonight?
I'm ready to vote.
Okay.
That was a pretty extensive site visit, and they answered a lot of questions then, which I realized the public was not privy to per se, but we spent a long time up there and they answered all of our questions and they addressed what are some of the things we asked them to do.
I agree. Thank you, Colleen. Does anybody else have any other concerns they want to raise?
Process wise, were you gonna do order of conditions tonight or do them subsequent if we approve?
I it is my opinion, and you guys can tell me what you think. I think that the conditions we had previously, plus a couple others that I would like to tag on. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel here. Our peer review person wrote them before. I thought they did a good job. There are a couple of things that have come up subsequent, just as talking through things a little bit more that I'd like to tag on. But other than that, I think we're in good shape for the conditions. Personally.
Gallons a minute, that's what they wanted to do. 2000.
The only thing I want to bookmark before we continue is I really would like to see Northeastern have somebody on staff whose job is to be a steward of the property, not looking out for the research, although that's critical, to be a steward of the property, to be on top of what's going on, to make sure things are clean and tidy and that wetlands aren't being adversely impacted, or there's not dead fish washing up on the beach, or there's not issues that they're not keeping an eye on. You know, I appreciate that it's a science-focused university and it's a satellite, so it doesn't have the same resources perhaps as the main campuses, but I think it's time to invest in somebody who's keeping an eye on the property. Even if it's once a week they're coming by. The fact that there isn't anyone there and that the commission and residents have to raise issues, to me, it's a non-starter. I don't think that that's how things should be done.
What's it pace? Kristen, maybe I'll do it.
You'll do it. No, but really, I mean, I know there's some guys that, I mean, there's site supervisors, right? There's somebody that's fixing things and keeping an eye on things, I would think. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe it becomes a part of somebody's job. I don't know, but I do think it's a nice property. It's an important property. It seems a shame to be neglecting their own resources by not investing in them that way. So, okay. Anything else from the commission?
So can we make that a condition?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too.
I don't think we can. It's outside the scope. I mean, you can't mandate that they hire somebody to.
Well, I mean, just take for an example, the contractor that's going to be doing the drilling is going to provide a plan of what happens if there's an oil leak or the drilling thing compressor breaks and oil happens, and he's done that. Now, is it up to the town, who may not be able to even see the thing because they're putting up construction sites that sees oil in the water? Who do they call? You know,
They would call us and DEP, depending on the size of the spill. But I mean, if there's certain things that we're concerned about, we can have a condition that says we have the right to hire an environmental monitor at their expense for things that we feel are critical issues. If there's certain things that we're particularly concerned about, we can include that in the order conditions. I mean, I don't think that's, why don't we just quickly, these are the additional conditions that I have thought of as we've gone through this. The environmental monitor, if needed at the university's expense, that we institute work hours for the directional drilling. I think that's important for the neighborhood. I think it's gonna be loud. It's something we just hadn't thought of before. That the university provide us with monthly work updates, work plan and progress updates throughout the duration of the project. That the existing pump house is removed. It wasn't included in the original scope. That there be no construction vehicle parking in the kind of gravel area adjacent to the existing pump house. I mean, I don't want it to be a place where they just store vehicles during construction. That there's be some kind of monitoring calibration annually, just to make sure that everything's working properly. And then all the previously approved conditions as well.
There was a condition number 38 that they were to provide weekly updates on the status of construction on the site.
Well, there you go. That's better. So we can stick with that.
That was already there.
Okay. So that being the case, do I hear a motion to issue an order of conditions with the aforementioned conditions and referenced conditions?
I
This is
move.
just a motion to get us to vote. You don't have to, this is not saying you want to do it or not. Thank you, Eden. Is there a second? Somebody has a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Skylar. Okay. Roll call vote. Eden, how do you vote?
I.
Put you on the spot first. Thank you. Skylar,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Colleen,
Aye.
and I am also aye. Passes unanimously. Okay. Thank you, guys. I will issue the order of conditions in the coming weeks.
Yes.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that, I'm sure that wasn't fun for a lot of us, but yeah, I think we all learned a lot from this process, so.
Thank you for the education, Rick. We
You're
appreciate
still
it.
public, Rick. You're still public here.
Yeah, well,
Just before.
nah, I don't know. Thank
I
you.
learned a
for-
lot. Thank you for your
Yeah.
work.
Well, we learned a lot too, so.
And thank you, Kristen, and best of luck in your next endeavors.
Oh,
Thank you.
Kristen. Not his fault. I'm only
Okay.
kidding. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought it was over. Sorry.
No, we're still going. Okay. Do we
sorry.
want to talk about enforcement fines or you want to save it for another day?
Yeah.
We can talk about it on our August 31st meeting.
Yes, please. I'm
Okay.
so tired.
Okay. Is there a motion to close the meeting?
I move.
Thank you, Eden.
I
Is there a
second.
second? Who was it? Sorry.
Skylar.
Skylar. Thank you. Okay. All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. That sounds unanimous. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night,
Thank you,
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.